Almighty God, as we have come together to begin our meeting of the Assembly, we humbly beseech you to grant to all our members the light and guidance of your Holy Spirit, that we may wisely take counsel together and come to such decisions as shall promote your glory and the well-being of all our citizens in this, our land, so that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be enjoyed by all people. Grant this for the sake of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Honorable members, you may have your seat.
Oath of allegiance of a new member. Announcements by the presiding officer.
Honorable members, I have received leave of absence from today's sitting from Assemblyman Natisha Charles Pantin, member for Bagatelle Bacolet, and Assemblyman Megan Morrison, member for Mount St. George Goodwood. The leaves are granted. Honorable members, I wish to enter into Hansard what would be our first welcome back to the House. Honorable members, let me take the opportunity to welcome you back to the chamber as we resume the business of this assembly. Much has shifted since we last convened. Members have moved on, and the political climate continues to evolve. And of course, policies are steadily being enacted. Yet amidst all these changes, one thing must remain resolute, that the people's business stand paramount, guiding our every deliberation and decision. It is not by design, but certainly by providence, that this first sitting in this new term speaks so directly to the meaning of service. Just last evening, Tobago's very first Chief Secretary was conferred with our nation's highest award. The moment was more than a personal achievement. It was a reminder to us all that Tobago's leadership and contribution to national life stands tall and are worthy of the highest recognition. So, what does service mean? It means more than occupying a seat in this chamber or carrying titles before our names. Service is a quiet sacrifice, often unseen, made on behalf of the people we represent. Service is the courage to make hard decisions, the humility to listen, and the discipline to rise above self-interest for the greater good. It is the recognition that our work here must ripple beyond these walls, into our communities, into our families, and into the very lives of the Tobagonians who depend on us. Service demands consistency, even when times change. It requires resilience, even when the climate grows uncertain. And it requires vision to chart a course not just for today, but for generations to come. So as we step into this new term of work, let us be inspired by the example we celebrated last night, that true service, grounded in integrity and purpose, is never forgotten. And may we each recommit ourselves to ensuring that in this people's house, the Tobago's voice will continue to be heard and its destiny shaped with honor. So again, members, I welcome you back to this, our final term for the session 2021 to 2025.
Assembly bills sent back from Cabinet. Assembly laws brought back from Parliament. Petitions, papers.
Secretary of Finance, Trade and Economy. Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer, and good afternoon to the members of this honorable House. I stand to lay the following papers: the monthly budget report for the Tobago House of Assembly for the month of May, and the Tobago House of Assembly monthly budget report as at the end of June 2025. Thank you.
Presentation of reports from Dispute Resolution Commission, select committees. Chief Secretary's questions, questions to secretaries, questions for oral answer.
Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 264 to the Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, Councillor Tashia Boris.
Councillor Boris, question 264.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question 264, regarding the March 2025 National Carnival related events and activities in Tobago, can the Secretary state the budget allocated for the March 2025 National Carnival events and activities in Tobago and provide a detailed breakdown of how these funds will be distributed among the various stakeholders and interests? Madam Presiding Officer, the budget for the March 2025 National Carnival is pegged at $5,795,250. Detailed breakdown under special interest groups, $1.5 million, $1,590,000. Support for Calypso tents, $80,000. Pantrinbago National Medium Band Finals, $1.3 million. Bagatelle Dirty Camp, $75,000. Crown Point Juve, $50,000. Calder Hall Juve, $50,000. Tobago Mass Bands Association administrative costs, $35,000. Grants, junior bands small, $45,000. Junior bands medium, $24,000. Junior bands large, $25,000. Senior bands small, $20,000. Senior bands medium, $14,000. Large bands, $30,000. Events, Windward Afro Queen Show, $385,000. Windward Calypso Competition, $285,000. Windward Junior Extravaganza, $128,000. Two-Court Junior Calypso Competition, $100,000. Scarborough Junior Extravaganza, $142,000. Scarborough Parade of Bands, $450,000. And Pantrinbago Pan on the Road, $237,000.
Any follow-up, Minority Councillor?
Yes, Madam Presiding Officer, thank you. Can the Secretary indicate if there are any outstanding balances to stakeholders or suppliers of the
Secretary Boris?
Carnival?
Councillor Boris?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. At this time, I am not certain, but I know that all efforts were made to settle with the stakeholders and interest groups first and foremost.
Any other follow-up? Assemblyman Duke, question 268.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. This question is posed to the Secretary of Tourism, Culture and Antiquities and Transportation. I know it is not Councillor Tashia Boris. It is question number 268. I would like you, Madam Presiding Officer, if I proceed with the question, to clarify who is now the Councillor or the Secretary for Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. As my question was aimed to that person in that department.
And your question was already also named, you named the person in which you presented your question to, Councillor Tashia Boris.
Madam President Officer, may I clarify for you this point? This is not a mimic point, it's a serious point.
Indeed it is, and it is supposed to count. Assemblyman Duke? Assemblyman Duke?
I'm dealing my question.
Assemblyman Duke?
All right, you want to answer
The question is also posed to Councillor Tashia Boris. She is with us today, and she, I am sure, is more than able to answer the question in whom you pose the question to.
Madam Presiding Officer, I have a right as an assemblyman here to ask you to clarify for me. I'm asking you that. It's the least you can do. Clarify for me.
And I think I was absolutely clear in stating.
The dichotomy.
Assemblyman Duke?
That exists.
Assemblyman Duke. The question is posed to Councillor Tashia Boris, who is not too far removed from you.
But the question more than the
Assemblyman Duke, this is not a tit for tat. Councillor Boris, please answer the question.
Before she answers the question, Madam Presiding Officer, I insist that you clarify for me. Don't challenge me, but clarify for me.
Assemblyman Duke.
I'm asking for clarity.
Assemblyman Duke, clarity has already been made.
No, I have not. I'm not clear on the matter.
Please,
I want to be clear.
Please be seated so that the question could be answered.
This question is aimed
Please be seated
at the Secretary
that
of
the
Tourism.
question could be answered. Councillor Boris, question 268.
Is she Secretary of Tourism still? I don't know.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. The question as put, 5.8 million was allocated for Tobago's Carnival. Can the Secretary explain why no funds were directed towards supporting the traditional parade of the bands in Roxboro? I'm advised. Regarding the allocation of the budget to Roxboro, the Tobago Mass Bands Association, in their role as coordinators for band registration, assessed the level of interest and participation from the community. Because only one band was registered and no groups or individuals were registered for any of the other categories, it was decided not to proceed with hosting the Roxboro Parade of the Bands event. This decision was subsequently communicated to the Commission by the Tobago Mass Band Association. Part 2 of the question. Given that Roxboro's Parade of the Bands has been an economic lifeline for micro-businesses in Tobago East for over a century, what immediate measures will be taken to compensate those who suffered financial losses due to the event's cancellation? The event was not cancelled by the action of the Tobago Festivals Commission Limited. The event did not come off because there was low interest in having an event, and the decision was taken not to proceed. As far as I'm aware, there have been no requests for compensation as a result of this, but the division remains open for any suggestions from the member for that area for any activities that we can support to encourage economic activity in Tobago East. Part 3, what rationale was used to shift the Carnival Queen Show from a Saturday to a Wednesday, and will steps be taken to restore it to a weekend slot to ensure better attendance and economic benefits for small businesses? The shift of the Afro Queen Show was made in response to stakeholders' request to host the Kiddies Carnival in Roxboro on Saturday to alleviate logistical challenges experienced in 2024 and 2023. The majority consensus supported the move, viewing it as an opportunity to explore its potential. The Saturday hosting of the Kiddies Carnival in Roxboro proved a resounding success. The event enjoyed strong crowd support and impressive vendor participation, providing strong economic support to businesses in the area. However, we acknowledge that the Afro Inward Queen Show on a weekday challenged those who traditionally expected it to be on a weekend, and as such, an assessment will be made for a new approach for 2026. Thank you.
Follow-up, Assemblyman Duke.
Madam Presiding Officer, I have a challenge digesting the information presented by Councillor Tashia Burris. Her pronoun seems to be mixed up to me. She's saying we. Who is the we there? Is it we, the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities? Who is the we that she's referring to? Please clarify that before I ask my next question. That we intend to do this, we intend to do that. The last time I read something, she was no longer
Assemblyman Duke, may I have
responsible.
your question, please?
Madam President, I cannot understand why is it that I'm not allowed to make my point. Why you're not treating my statements as statements made in the House. I'm not outside the House, you know.
Assemblyman Duke.
I'm inside the House, and I ought to
Assemblyman
be afforded
Duke.
the protection of the House and the right to respond in the House. You asked me for a question.
I'm on my feet.
All right.
Now, let's set the tone correctly for the rest of the term. You are within your right to ask a question. I'm not interrupting your question. However, if I ask you to state a question, I prefer to have a question stated rather than a run-on statement. Can you kindly, to the House, your colleagues, ask a question?
Okay. To Councillor Tashia Burris, are you still a secretary for Tourism, Culture, and Antiquities? Question.
May I ask what is the relevance of that question, Assemblyman Duke?
Madam Presiding Officer,
In keeping
you cannot
with
badgering me
your
like that in the House.
substantial question. That is not in keeping with your substantial question. Kindly ask a question in keeping with your substantial question.
Madam Presiding Officer, I refuse to be badgered by you. I refuse to be badgered by ask a question.
Assemblyman, you come on my feet. Now, you presented a question about, if I'm not mistaken, the Tobago Carnival.
Exactly.
Kindly ask your question, your follow-up question, along the lines of your substantive question. Correct? You are a seasoned member of this House. I know you know better than that. Kindly ask a question along the lines of your substantive question.
For emphasis, I wish to repeat my substantive question and then ask a question for the avoidance of doubt. Do I belong to this House still? Am I a member of this House? Bona fide member? Why are you trying to insult me, yawning on me? Madam Presiding Officer, the camera pick it up. The whole country is watching at you. Your behavior towards me.
Assemblyman Duke, please present your question
I will
to
repeat my
Councillor
question
Boundaries.
again, and then I'll ask the question in line with the question that I so repeat. Let me get it correctly there. I asked the written question. I just want to repeat it just to ensure I'm in line with it. Question number 28, I asked the Secretary of Tourism and Culture, the Secretary of Tourism and Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, Councillor Tashia Boris. And I asked her about the $5.8 million that was allocated to Tobago Carnival. And if she can explain why no funds was directed towards supporting the traditional parade of bands in Roxboro. The response was that they held a meeting, well, only one band in Roxboro was registered. I'm going over again. Second question. Given the report, given the Roxboro parade of bands has been an economic lifeline to micro business in Tobago East over a century, what immediate measures will be taken to compensate those who suffered financial loss due to the event's calculation? And she answered and said, no one has made any presentation, but we shall consider any proposal. It is in that regard, Madam Presiding Officer, I have every single right as a bona fide assemblyman to ask the question, who is we? Are you still, Madam Councillor, a member with responsibility or a secretary with responsibility for tourism, culture, antiquities, and transportation? That's my first follow-up question in context of your response, that we will look at it. Thank you.
Councillor Boris.
I am not sure what I should be answering to Madam Presiding Officer, because no member of the public is sitting around this horseshoe. So until I am informed and this House is informed that I'm no longer a councillor and welcome around this horseshoe with the appointment as Secretary in charge of the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, I am still the Secretary.
Follow-up, Assemblyman Duke.
Madam Presiding Officer, to use my famous statement, I am shocked. I am flabbergasted. I am blown away by the statement. Madam Presiding Officer, I would have had the opportunity to read a correspondence.
Assemblyman Duke,
I'm asking a follow-up question.
Members, thank you. I would love to hear your follow-up question.
But you're not allowing me. You're not allowing me at all. I have a right to ask questions
We
on this
have,
subject.
again, members, the process is simple. You rise, you ask your question. The person in which you are asking the question of rises and responds. We have been at this long enough to know that that's how it goes. I would prefer if you ask a question.
Okay.
Assemblyman Duke?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Secretary of Tourism, Culture, and Antiquities and Transportation. I don't know who to look at, but I look at the last person who claimed to be the holder of the position, Tashia Boris. Let me first make my question properly. Am I, as Assemblyman, hearing you correctly, that you are still the secretary for, I'm asking, I want to follow up on something, Madam Presiding Officer. All right? Am I hearing you clearly that you are still the secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation? I'll then ask the next question.
Assemblyman Duke, you're out of order.
No,
Yes,
I want
you
to
are.
ask a question.
Yes, you are. She just answered that question. Ask your next question.
Madam Presiding Officer, I did not
Assemblyman
hear clearly.
Duke,
I asked you to
Assemblyman
make
Duke,
the
I
point
am-
clear.
Please have your seat. I am not going to allow you to run this house amok.
Me?
I'm not. I am not.
I'm just seeking clarity.
She answered your question. Ask another question.
Madam Presiding Officer, in this manual is something called clarity, and this is what I'm seeking.
Assemblyman Duke, do you have a question for Councillor Boris?
Yes.
Kindly ask it.
Let me get me standing order and quote the question I'm asking under what? Should have all these things a little more sharp. You know. But on the headings, under clarity, I can't find it right now, but in this book, all right, because I'm so busy, I don't want to occupy too much time.
You can just kindly ask your question.
I'm seeking clarity, Madam Presiding Officer, from you, whether I can seek clarity on any issue. Could I seek clarity from you on that?
No.
So I cannot seek clarity on any issue.
You're not seeking clarity on that question. Kindly ask another question.
Tashia Grace Boris, Secretary, maybe just the Secretary, I'm to use that word, Secretary of Tourism and Culture. Tashia Boris, could you tell me how the Secretary of Tourism would deal with the complaints of those who have suffered from selling the benebol, the kushu cake, and all this kind of stuff? Because there are many persons like that. Could you please tell me what is the channel to get those complaints and assess those challenges for compensation? Because as the assemblyman for the area, I've been bombarded by several people who are seeking some level of compensation for missed sales. Missed sales, as every year they would normally sell the benebol, the sugar cake, the sandwich, whatever. And in that particular season, they were not able to do that because of the event that was removed.
Councillor Boris.
As I indicated previously, Madam Presiding Officer, I have not received any requests for compensation at the Division of Tourism. Neither have I been informed by the CEO of the Tobago Festivals Commission that requests for compensation have been received by them. If the member for Roxboro, 7 months down the road, is now indicating that many persons came to him complaining that they need compensation for missed sales, I would say to him that the division's mailbox is open. You can direct those requests to the Division of Tourism, or you can forward them to the Tobago Festivals Commission Limited to be treated with.
Final follow-up, Mr. Duke.
Thank you.
Assemblyman Duke.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. On the third question, the rationale for the shift of the Carnival Queen Show from Saturday to Wednesday because of Kiddies Carnival. The people of Roxboro are concerned whether the shift will take place again at the next carnival season to another date, or you all are through with experimenting and will retain and will return the Carnival Queen Show to the normal Saturday night?
Councillor Boris.
Madam Presiding Officer, there was a post-mortem exercise that was conducted after the carnival, both in Roxboro and Scarborough, where stakeholders and members of the public were able to give their views as to what went well in the carnival and what could be improved. So I anticipate that coming out of that activity, that all suggestions made by the people of Roxboro will be taken into consideration in 2026.
Madam Presiding Officer, that didn't answer the question. That was a speech.
The question was answered.
It was a yes or no question, whether the carnival would
Assemblyman
return to
Dew,
Saturday
kindly
night or
have
not.
your seat. Question 270, Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, and welcome back to this final session of the term. Question 270 to the Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation.
Councillor Boris.
That the THA allocated $5.8 million for the March 2025 National Carnival in Tobago. Is the Secretary satisfied with the organization of the carnival activities held on the island? The THA's allocation of $5.8 million for the March 2025 National Carnival represented a significant investment in the island's cultural and creative sectors. And in light of this, I acknowledge that while there were notable successes, such as increased community engagement, strong involvement by stakeholders, larger than usual participation from juniors, and improved support for local vendors, there always remain areas for enhancement. Overall, I'm generally satisfied with the organization of the carnival activities, particularly how the collaborative effort between various stakeholders occurred. However, we did a comprehensive review via post-mortem, and as I indicated earlier, those suggestions and recommendations coming out of that post-mortem intend to be actioned in 2026. Can the Secretary give a breakdown of how funds were allocated? Special interest groups, $1,590,000, grants, $158,000, events, $1,105,000, regulatory fees, $129,000, infrastructure, $990,000, production costs, $220,000, prizes, $1,022,250, adjudication, $117,000, marketing and branding, $314,000, hospitality, $150,000, for a total of $5,795,000, $595,250. Thank you.
Follow-up, Minority Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Can the Secretary indicate definitively what is the quantum of the budget that has not yet been expended or remains unallocated? That is, we want specifically what is the total value of the people you still owe?
Councillor Boris.
Officer, I don't have that information at hand, unfortunately.
Follow-up, Minority.
Madam Presiding Officer, this question was filed since March. We are now in September, and 6 months down the road, we cannot say how many people and what is the value of who we owe.
Okay, members. Members,
I am flabbergasted.
I'm hearing a little bit too much. Kindly state your...
Madam Presiding Officer, I am confused as to what is the reason that would basically deny the Secretary from having an exact figure. 6 months later, the festival has been gone in March, we are in September, and all I'm asking for is a figure as to how much money do you still owe? And you think something as basic as that, the Secretary should have that information?
Thank you, Assemblyman Morris. Allow me to add my 2 cents here. Your question is a follow-up question and not something that was tabled on the order paper.
No, I asked for a breakdown of the breakdown of the cost. And I'm
question,
saying, if you have the exact
Assemblyman
breakdown.
Morris? Thank you. Your question is a follow-up question, and it was not tabled on the other paper, right? So I am going to allow for Secretary Boris to send that information through my office to you.
Thank you.
Next follow-up.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And this goes to my next question, which is, why is it that we always have to have confusion with respect to the allocation to stakeholders when it comes to Carnival?
Repeat, Assemblyman Morris.
Can the Secretary explain why is it there's always confusion between the Tobago Festival Commission Limited and the stakeholders when it comes to their allocation within the budget of the Carnival? Why there's always this confusion between stakeholders not knowing what is their allocation and when they will receive their allocation?
Members, I'm hearing the echo of a phone. Please remember that we are in session and all phones are either to be on silent or vibrate. Yes? Councillor Boris.
Madam Presiding Officer, as far as I'm aware, there's a clear process that takes place. Stakeholders are called to meetings. They are asked to submit proposals. Proposals are considered, and those proposals form part of a larger Executive Council minute that is sent for approval. So I am unclear as to what the minority is referring to when he speaks of confusion, because as far as I'm aware, the stakeholders have a relationship with the Festivals Commission, who is the body responsible for the Carnival, and they are responsible for communicating to them what their allocations are and when they are expected to receive that funding based on when funding becomes available. Thank you.
Follow-up, Assemblyman Morris.
Madam Presiding Officer, and finally, with respect to the Carnival, the National Carnival, it is widely documented that both the Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Tourism did indicate that they would phase out this Carnival. So I'm hearing the Secretary speaking about Carnival 2026. Is it that the policy has now changed?
Councillor Boris.
There's no shift in the policy, Madam Presiding Officer, whereas the bulk of the budget for a carnival in any given fiscal year in the past was directed towards National Carnival. Because we have created a Tobago October Carnival in October, the policy decision has been to support the Tobago October Carnival. What we have decided to do with respect to National Carnival is focus on national activities, supporting our pansides, for example, our junior and senior monarchs to compete in national competition. We make sure that they are given the support and the resources to do so. But the bulk of the budget for any carnival in any given year has now been allocated towards a Tobago October Carnival in 2020, starting from 2022.
Question 272.
Thank you once again, Madam Presiding Officer.
Assemblyman Morris.
Question 272 to the Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation.
Councillor Boris.
Madam Presiding Officer, according to Standing Order 26.5, not more than 3 questions requiring an oral answer shall appear on the order paper in the name of a secretary of a member for the same day.
Members.
And any question in excess of this number shall not be called by the presiding officer, but shall be answered as provided in paragraph 7 of this standing order, save that no postponement shall be allowed.
Honorable members, I know you are well aware that if a member is on their feet, you have to allow them to present or to say what they need to say uninterrupted. I am actually seeking clarity on Standing Order 26.5, and until that information is given back to me, we would move on to the next question outside of Councillor Boris's name. It seems like all the questions are presented to you, Councillor Boris. Yeah?
No, I'm waiting for your...
I'm seeking clarity on...
No, there's other questions, but I'm waiting for your guidance as to which question.
As far as I'm concerned here, the rest of questions are to Councillor Boris.
There are 275, 278, 279, 275. So 278 is the Dr. Pete Bretman, who is absent. 279 is the Secretary of Education.
Holidays. Delia, this, I don't have the full order paper. Let me your order paper. Assemblyman Morris.
Question 279 to the Secretary of Education, Research and Technology, Assemblyman Zarisha Hackett.
Assemblyman Hackett.
Madam Presiding Officer, I don't have the question in front of me on my sheet, but I have the answer, so if I need to restate it, may I borrow someone's order paper, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. With respect to the Early Childhood Care and Education School in Courland, Tobago, can the Secretary outline the following? A, the tender process that was followed for this project. B, the selected bidder or contractor and the official business address of this contractor. C, the agreed amount of the contract. And D, the projected or agreed completion time for the project. With respect to the Courland ECCE, I wish to respond to the following questions. A, the tender process that was followed for this project. On February 8, 2024, public notice was issued inviting requests for proposals or RFPs for the design, build, finance, and outfitting of the Courland ECCE. The procurement utilized a two-envelope system in keeping with the requirements of the OPR. Interested firms are also invited to a pre-submission meeting and site visit on February 28, 2024, where 10 firms attended. By the closing date of March 25, 2024, 5 submissions were received. B, the selected bidder/contractor and the official business address of this contractor. Madam Presiding Officer, following evaluation, the contract was awarded to One Source Maintenance Construction Company Limited, whose registered address is 36 Farmland Boulevard, North Caspian Drive, Point Lisas Industrial Estate, Point Lisas, Trinidad. C, the agreed amount of the contract. The total contract sum is $7,320,282.98. And D, the projected or agreed completion time for the project. That is within 6 months of commencement. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Follow-up, Assemblyman Morris.
Madam Presiding Officer, can the Secretary confirm, because she said 6 months, when the project will be actually commenced?
Assemblyman Hackett.
Madam Presiding Officer, that was not a question on the other paper. I can get the information. I expect a commencement by October 2025, but I would like to have clarity from the project managers before that goes on record. Thank you.
When you do, please forward the information through my office. And
Sure.
Assemblyman Morris, you would be copied in that note. Follow-up?
Given that it was on the Black Table Talks, a member of this House indicated the debilitating effects of contracts going outside of Tobago. Is the Secretary concerned that yet again another Trinidad contractor has won a substantial contract in Tobago?
Madam Presiding
Assemblyman
Officer,
Hackett.
I am not responsible for procurement. 10 companies bidded for this. There were several Tobagonians on that list, as far as I'm aware, and the successful contractor received that contract.
Follow-up, Assemblyman Morris.
So, Secretary, as a PDP turned TPP, the mantra is no longer...
Members.
So the mantra no longer is Tobago first. Can I confidently assume, moving from PDP to TPP?
I would deem that question out of order, Assemblyman Morris, but you are free to ask another follow-up question.
So, under this current administration, is there any policy to ensure that Tobagonians are given priority?
Madam
Assemblyman
Presiding
Hackett.
Officer, as far as I'm aware, Minority Leader was sent to ask this question by one of his financiers. And
Madam Presiding Officer, I reject this out of hand.
No.
Thank you.
Have a seat.
And it's smiling like
Have a
a
seat. Members, you all are very much aware of the standing orders of
Say it outside. I want you to say it outside. That's why I want to let me spend some of that per diem where I get.
Assemblyman Morris, I am on my feet.
I want you to
And
say
the
it
last time I
outside.
checked, I'm...
Say it outside.
Assemblyman Morris. Members. Assemblyman Morris. Assemblyman Morris, I am on my feet. Assemblyman Hackett, please retract your statement and answer the question.
Madam Presiding Officer, the facts is a Tobago contractor.
Kindly retract your statement.
Madam Presiding Officer, I retract
Continue.
my statement. Madam Presiding Officer, I am aware that a claim was made to the OPR by a particular financier, and it was rejected by the OPR, and said financier asked Minority Leader to raise question in this House. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Members, again.
Gladly.
Assemblyman Morris, I am on my feet. I am on my feet, Assemblyman Morris. Members of this Honorable House, this august chamber, kindly be reminded of the standing orders, which are our guidelines to procedure. Assemblyman Hackett, kindly retract that statement and answer the question.
What is the question, Madam Presiding Officer? May I have it restated, please?
One more time,
I can't
Assemblyman Morris.
Well, perhaps she needs to retract first and then I'll ask, because she hasn't retracted the second time.
Retract.
Notwithstanding, you would
Assemblyman
have told her not to repeat.
Assemblyman Hackett, kindly retract your statement. Assemblyman Morris, you will then pose your question to her one more time.
I retract my statement unwillingly, Madam Presiding Officer.
Assemblyman Morris, please repeat your question.
Given that those on that side seem to have a problem with me standing up for Tobagonians, I will simply repeat, is there any policy in place to prioritize our Tobago-based suppliers, contractors, etc., who depend on the THA's allocation?
Thank you. Assemblyman Hackett.
Madam Presiding Officer, I am not a procurement officer. The Tobago House of Assembly is guided by the OPR, and the questions asked of the project manager provided these responses, and I'm going to be so guided by them. No other question concerning the procurement should be posed to me, Madam Presiding Officer.
She just said the procurement process. And that was your final follow-up for that question. We move on. Oh, wow. Question 280 in the name of Assemblyman Morris.
Question 280 to the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, Assemblyman Trevor James.
Assemblyman James.
House, and welcome. I want to welcome every member back to this final session, I might say.
Final term.
Final term. Madam Presiding Officer, it seems as though we've started out in a very heated footing, and I hope that it continues. It's very lively and very entertaining. As it relates to the question is posted in 4 parts, and I continue to be concerned about long questions, but however, part A, the answer is the expenditure to date is $46,531,127.98. Part B, the amount paid for all acquisition of land or land settlement associated with the project, including but not limited to the matter involving the ramp facades and all legal fees associated with same. The matter is inconclusive at this time, Madam Presiding Officer, as it involves the acquisition of the Friendship Estate, which the state has been trying to acquire through compulsory acquisition for 2 decades, which remain incomplete as we speak. Our efforts at researching as to know what was the cost that the state paid for the Friendship Estate has proven futile so far, and we continue to search the annals of the THA to find out that figure. Maybe the member can ask where the data is. As it refers to the Roberts at Killigrew Estate, we have to date spent $0 on land acquisition, and the legal fees associated with that matter is ongoing and inconclusive at this time. Question C. The total amount to be paid, the total amount paid to the contractor to date, it seems to be a repeat. However, the amount paid to the contractor to date is $46,531,128.98. Part D, the current projected cost of the project. The current projected cost as of today is $651,478.06.
Follow-up, Assemblyman Morris.
Madam Presiding Officer, I recall a commitment given by the Chief Secretary with respect to this project that no payments will be made until the completion of this project for 9 months and then a further 18 months. And so now I am confused as to how we have moved from that commitment to a payment of almost 50%, more than 50% of the value.
May I have your question, Assemblyman
So
Morris?
I am asking, was there a variation of the contract, and what are the new terms of that contract? given that the first arrangement we were told was design, build, finance, and there would be no payment before the completion until 9 months thereafter, and a further 50% paid 18 months thereafter.
Just for clarity, can I have a question, please?
So I'm simply asking what are the contents of the new, whether there was a variation of those terms, and what are the contents of those, of the new arrangement.
Thank you. Assemblyman James?
Madam Presiding Officer, I want to say that I don't have the terms of the contract with me, but I won't say that. The reality is that the contract was designed to be executed over a particular period of time. Expected payment, therefore, was calculated based on the completion date as per that time. And we are far past the timeline in the contract for 9 months to be paid. And so we've started making the payments based on that.
Assemblyman Morris, follow up.
Madam Presiding Officer, just to revisit the statement of the Chief Secretary, he was pellucidly clear that no payments would be made until the completion. It had nothing to do with the length of the except that it was to be completed first before payments were made. That is what was said. And
Question,
so I'm simply stating whether that contract was varied and what are the new terms that has given rise to payments being advanced to the tune of $46 million.
Assemblyman James.
Madam Presiding Officer, I believe I've answered that question.
Assemblyman Morris.
Madam Presiding Officer, I want to revisit as well the response given with respect to land acquisition, because I recognize the member would have commingled issues of the estate and failed to answer specifically to that issue of Ray Shastri's Rampasad and Safitri Rampasad, which is a matter of public knowledge that was in the High Court where an injunction was placed. The road has since been completed, which means there would have been some sort of agreement. And I'm asking on behalf of the people of Tobago, what was that agreement that would have allowed the THA to go forward with the completion of that road? Was the people paid and how much?
Assemblyman Morris, this is this little problem I have when you present your questions. It almost sounds like it's too folded. So can you kindly clearly state what your question is?
So I want to know, with a level of assurance first, was there any agreement and what was that agreement?
Assemblyman James.
Madam Presiding Officer, I feel your pain. I answered the question as clearly as I could. This seems to be an absolutely new question, but I can say in repeating my answer that we have paid the Rampasads $0. We went to the court, we went to the High Court, so that we don't prolong this thing. We went to the High Court, and the High Court, along with the Rampasad's attorney, agreed that we can settle the matter out of court. We came up with an agreement to purchase the parcel of land with which the road occupies, and we have since that time agreed on a valuation, and we are yet to pay.
Question answered. Next question.
That might be 3 follow-up already, I think.
Follow-up question, Assemblyman Morris.
Madam Presiding Officer, I would move on.
Unfortunately, Assemblyman Morris, our time for question and answer has expired. Clerk?
Requests for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by Secretaries and Assistant Secretaries. personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the Assembly and moved by a secretary or assistant secretary. Public business, motion.
Assemblyman Hackett, you may now start this debate.
Madam Presiding Officer, I seek leave to invoke Standing Order 42.6 to read particular extracts of my presentation.
Leave so granted.
Madam Presiding Officer, honorable colleagues, former members of the Tobago House of Assembly in the chamber this afternoon or listening, and the people of Tobago. There are moments in the life of a people when we must pause, not simply to reflect, Madam Presiding Officer, but to act. Not simply to remember, Madam Presiding Officer, but to right the wrongs that history has left unfinished. Madam Presiding Officer and my colleagues, today is such a moment. This chamber is more than wood and stone. It is the cradle of Tobago's self-government quest, born in 1980 with hope, with struggle, and with sacrifice. These walls have echoed the voices of our pioneers, men and women who dared to believe that Tobago's voice could no longer be a whisper in Port of Spain, but be a voice of equal weight in shaping this nation. But Madam Presiding Officer, as noble as that history is, it is scarred with inequity. For over 4 decades, we'll be celebrating 45 years this year. Members of this assembly have borne the weight of responsibility, yet too many have retired without security, without dignity, without the justice that should naturally follow in service of this honorable house. Let me be clear, Madam Presiding Officer. This is not the story of one assembly or one group. It stretches across the entire life of this institution. Those who served from 1980 to 1996, the pioneers, what we call the first 4 assemblies, had no pension scheme at all. They gave up themselves in the infancy of this assembly, when the institution was fragile and unproven. Yet, when they left with nothing. Those who served between 1996 and 2001, the 5th Assembly, entered under the Unit Trust Corporation Contributory Pension Scheme. They paid in. They trusted the system. They believed their service would be secured in retirement. Instead, the plan was discontinued. Their contributions clawed back, and they were left empty-handed. And from 1980 to present, Madam Presiding Officer, every single assemblyman has faced harsher qualifying conditions than our counterparts or members of parliament in Trinidad. In parliament, 1 full term entitles a member to pension. In this house, assemblymen and councillors have been told that they must serve longer despite our terms being shorter. 3 injustices woven together across the Assembly's 44 and almost 45-year history. But Madam Presiding Officers, these injustices are not abstract. No, they belong to names, to human beings, to men and women who have carried Tobago's burdens on their backs. And these years of service amount to almost 150 years, Madam Presiding Officer, cumulatively. And yet, many of these pioneers are no longer with us. We remember with reverence Assemblyman Edwin Caesar, Assemblyman and Chairman Dr. Jefferson G. Davidson, Assemblyman George Archer, Assemblyman Thomas Dinoon, Assemblyman Bernadette Devines, Assemblyman Beatrice Julian, Assemblyman William Mackenzie, Assemblyman Clarence Warner, Assemblyman Kenneth Murray, Assemblyman Henry James, Assemblyman Norris Jordan, Assemblyman Pearl Solomon, Assemblyman and Chairman Lennox Dinoon, Assemblyman Dolores Edwards, and of course, Assemblyman Carlisle Dick. And there are so many councillors who have also passed on. Let us pause here, Madam Presiding Officer, and acknowledge that although they may not be present in this chamber to speak on their own behalf, their immense sacrifices cannot be overlooked, and it is our duty as a House to advocate firmly on their behalf. Madam Presiding Officer, their labor may have been erased from the financial records, but it must never be erased from the moral record of this House. Madam Presiding Officer, this is not just about laws and numbers. This motion is about people. And I hold right now in my hand an article dated Friday, 7th December 2018. And the headline reads, "Former Assemblymen beg PM for pensions." Let me read it again. Former Assemblymen beg PM, PM stands for Prime Minister, for pensions. Imagine that. Pioneers of Tobago's self-government struggle, reduced to begging. The article records the cries of former Assemblyman and who at one time served as councillor, Regis Karut, who resigned from the teaching service to serve Tobago for 11 years, only to retire from this August House with nothing. It speaks of George Stanley Baird, who gave 12 years and walked away without pension. These are not my words, Madam Presiding Officer. These are their words, printed in black and white. Their disappointment, their frustration, their plea for fairness. They wrote, Madam Presiding Officer, they petitioned, they appealed, and they still had to come to us as a current administration because successive parliaments have turned them away. Madam Presiding Officer, as a member of the Executive Council, I cannot stand here and pretend that this is only someone else's duty. No, all of us in this August chamber, the Executive Council led by the Honorable Farley Chavez Augustine, we have a responsibility too. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. For those earliest members, those from 1980 to 1996, who were excluded from any pension system whatsoever, relief cannot wait for Parliament alone. Interim support must come from us, the Executive Council. Whether through ex gratia payments or temporary measures, we must ease their burden. This is not generosity, my colleagues and Madam Presiding Officer. This is justice. These were the men and women who proved that the Assembly could stand. To leave them with nothing would be to deny the very foundation upon which we ourselves now serve. But let me also be clear, Madam Presiding Officer. Interim support is only a stopgap. It is not the cure. The cure can only come through law. And so, Madam Presiding Officer, we turn to the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, because only Parliament has the authority to enact the legislative amendments that will correct these injustices for all members across all assemblies of this August House. But let us also be sober, Madam Presiding Officer. Parliament has failed us before. That 2018 headline was not the first time Tobago's cries reached Port of Spain. Letters were written long before. Petitions were sent long before. Appeals were made long before. Yet each time the matter was shelved, deferred, dismissed. If Parliament could act retroactively to protect the pensions of other public servants and even its own members, then what excuse remains for leaving Tobago's pioneers unprotected? Madam Presiding Officer, the path forward is not complex. As a matter of fact, we all know a bill could be drafted, and this bill could be drafted with three clear pillars. But one of the things I'm calling members on the minority and even the Assemblyman for Roxboro Argyle is for us to collaboratively draft this bill. The pillars will include retroactive coverage to recognize the service of those excluded before 1996, restoration of contributions to correct the injustice faced between 1996 and 2001, and parity in qualifying conditions to ensure one full term in the Assembly affords all members a pension, just as one full term does in Parliament. And Madam Presiding Officer, I think this is achievable. It has precedent, and it only requires will. But I want to say and put on the record, Madam Presiding Officer, that this motion is not about money. It is about fairness. It is about whether we honor those who built the path we now walk on or not. It is about whether we as Tobagonians will accept second-class treatment for legislators while parliamentarians across the water are protected. It is about whether service to Tobago is valued or not, whether it is treated as disposable or not. And we can speak of valuing democracy. We cannot rather speak of valuing democracy, Madam Presiding Officer, if we discard the very ones who carried it. We cannot reap the fruits of their labor and deny them a share. And most importantly, we cannot sing their praises and the praises of self-government while refusing to dignify those who fought for it. And so, Madam Presiding Officer, as I sit in this space and coming up with the research for such an important motion, I had conversations with former assemblymen and former councillors, with former presiding officers, with MPs who served in the times when these claims came to the fore. I also had conversations with those on the other side, specifically Assemblyman for Roxboro Argyle, who, as you all know, has been a champion of the people. And we agreed on several things. We agreed that the very motion brought needed to be expanded. It needed to speak to what all assemblies endure. And therefore, Madam Presiding Officer, this is not a majority versus minority motion. It is not a DAC, NAR, TOP, PNM, PDP, TPP motion. It is a fight for the noble servants of this honorable assembly. And therefore, Madam Presiding Officer, every Tobagonian stands taller today on the shoulders of these pioneers, but we must be able to stand here now for them. Madam Presiding Officer, let us not be divided on this. It is my request and wish that this entire House stands together. It is my request that this be recorded in the Hansard that today, on this day, this assembly spoke in one voice in defense of fairness, in defense of dignity, and in defense of justice. Madam Presiding Officer, history is watching, and we affirm today that all members of this assembly, from its inception to present, deserve fair and reasonable retirement support. Madam Presiding Officer, in my research, I was able to come upon some of the requests made where even the Office of the Ombudsman responded. And as I make my plea, whereas spoken on the floor, the interim measures of the Executive Council must be brought to bear, but also the importance of us seeking Parliament's intervention, I want to speak to the challenges faced. Without naming the Assemblyman, I am going to read an extract from said letter. Dear Sir, I have to refer to representations made to the Ombudsman in relation to the determination of the period of public service which will be reckonable for the compensation of superannuation benefits upon retirement. The following issues are noted from the facts you have presented. that your tenure of service as a councillor, Tobago House of Assembly, from 1981 to 1992 is not regarded as pensionable. What should have been said is your tenure of service of councillor and of assemblyman, because members served in both capacities, and it's not regarded as pensionable under the Pensions Ordinance. And in the absence of legislation which provides for the payment of pension and gratuities to members of the THA, it is not possible to link the service of what you once served in to the tenure as a councillor and then assemblyman for the purpose of computing pension benefits. Act 20 of 1997, and I have it right here, Madam Presiding Officer, deals with the preservation and linking of pensionable service in the public service. And the provisions of the Act are applicable in respect to the preservation of your prior service before 1981 and the linking of that service to your tenure following re-employment after 1993. It would therefore be necessary for the relevant legislation to be passed in order for the tenure of service as councillor and assemblyman to be deemed pensionable and thus considered in the computation of retirement benefits. When this service is considered pensionable, the provisions of Act 20 of 1997 would be applicable in terms of preserving and linking such service to the period of your prior service. And that's the end of the quote utilized from the Ombudsman. Madam Presiding Officer, therefore, upon placing this particular motion on the order paper, and after having conversations, as I said before, with former assemblymen and councillors, even members on the other side, we agree that this is not a motion that speaks to any particular term in office, but it speaks to us all as assemblymen. And I raised it before of the particular periods where injustices were faced. But Madam Presiding Officer, although I'm about to read the original motion into the Hansard as it stands in my name, I want you to note that there will be some amendments. The original motion, for the record, Madam Presiding Officer, is whereas Section 16.5 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996 provides that the Assembly shall, in accordance with the financial rules made under Section 52, establish a contributory pension scheme for members. And whereas such a contributory pension scheme has since been implemented for current and recent members of the Assembly, thereby affording them structured retirement benefits. And whereas former members of the Assembly, before the establishment of the contributory pension scheme, were not eligible to participate, and as a result, do not enjoy retirement benefits equivalent to those now available. And whereas this inequity leaves former members of the Assembly without adequate pension arrangements, despite their years of service to the people of Tobago. And whereas it is a fundamental principle of fairness and good governance that those who have held elective office should not be disadvantaged by the timing of reforms that now benefit their successors, be it resolved that this Honourable House affirms that all who have served as members of the Assembly should have access to fair and reasonable retirement support. And be it further resolved that this House supports the Executive Council in its efforts to provide appropriate retirement provisions for former members of the Assembly who were not part of the contributory pension scheme, ensuring that their service is duly recognized. Madam Presiding Officer, should I repeat the motion in its original state? Madam Presiding Officer, I now beg to move this motion standing in my name.
Honourable members, the question proposed is, whereas Section 16.5 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996 provides that the Assembly shall, in accordance with the financial rules made under Section 52, establish a contributory pension scheme for members. And whereas such a contributory pension scheme has since been implemented for current and recent members of the Assembly, thereby affording them structured retirement benefits. And whereas former members of the Assembly, before the establishment of the contributory pension scheme, were not eligible to participate and as a result do not enjoy retirement benefits equivalent to those now available. And whereas this inequity leaves former members of the Assembly without adequate pension arrangement despite their years of service to the people of Tobago, and whereas it is a fundamental principle of fairness and good governance that those who have held elected office should not be disadvantaged by the timing of reforms that now benefit their successors, be it resolved that this Honourable House affirms that all who have served as members of the Assembly should have access to fair and reasonable retirement support. Be it further resolved that this House supports the Executive Council in its efforts to provide appropriate retirement provisions for former members of the Assembly who were not part of the contributory pension scheme, ensuring that their service is duly recognized. As per Standing Order 41.3, member for Palliative Lansome Speyside, you may now join us in debate.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer, for the opportunity to contribute to this debate. I also want to thank the minority leader who will ordinarily speak immediately after the move of the motion, because I did ask back channel if he will allow me to move some amendments and to speak on the motion one time. Let me also say, for the benefit of members in the House, that should the debate today go on long, I will unfortunately have to leave a little earlier because I have a relative who is hospitalized that I will need to see. So that too is one of the reasons why I've opted to speak this early in the debate. Madam Presiding Officer, I want to thank the member for Bethesda, Lekoto, Courland Lane, for presenting this motion in the House. When this motion was drafted and placed on the order paper, and we started publicizing the motion, several people started reaching out. In fact, up to sometime after 1 this morning, I got a WhatsApp message from a former member of the Assembly adding new information that I was unaware of prior to the drafting of the motion. And it is in view of the fact that there are members beyond those that served prior to 1996 who, for one reason or the other, they have difficulties getting some benefits, any benefits, after having served the public, that I will wish, by the end of my short contribution, to propose some amendments which will then give us the latitude to try to fix the issue for all that are affected, including the fact that there is a potential that there may be members of this House who may be affected in the future by what currently obtains. Madam Presiding Officer, the Tobago House of Assembly can be looked at in two halves. In the first half, between 1980 and 1996, December of 1996, we have what essentially is the first incarnation of the revised Tobago House of Assembly. Of course, this year we're celebrating the fact that the Tobago space has the oldest parliament, with this creature called an assembly being some 200 years old. So between 1980 and 1996, We had the first half of this reviewed, revisited, refreshed Tobago House of Assembly in what was then independent Trinidad and Tobago. And then between 1996 and present, we operate under Act 40 of 1996. This is one of the issues, Madam Presiding Officer. If we have a decent enough, a good enough autonomy bill passed at the Parliament, we will be able to completely resolve on our own. The reality is, the bills that were all carried to Parliament to grant Tobago the autonomy that we have been clamoring for, they have all been so seriously flawed that they could not attract yet the support of wider Tobago and Tobagonians. Notwithstanding, we have in the interim to put measures in place to treat with gaps that exist in the current legislation and in the framework that is the Tobago House of Assembly. As it now stands, Madam Presiding Officer, and if you look at one of the recitals, one of the recitals actually quotes what happens at present. The current arrangement, based on Act 40 of 1996, is that there should be a members' contributory type arrangement for a pension scheme for members. In other words, members elected or appointed to this House all contribute to a pension scheme. And the law says that the Tobago House of Assembly should determine what that scheme is and what the benefits should be. That's what currently obtains. It's instructive to note, Madam Presiding Officer, that in the year 1998, with the very first government to operate under Act 40 of 1996, led by now deceased former Chief Secretary Hochoy Charles, who yesterday posthumously was awarded the highest order in the country. And I wish the real award to be our autonomy. But in 1998, via Executive Council Minute number 152 of June 8th that year, the Executive Council established a pension plan with the Unit Trust Corporation. So that's where it started. So the 1996 Act that establishes the current format of the THA puts the responsibility on this House, on the members of this House, and on the Executive Council to determine what the pension for members should be. And it should be a pension scheme that members contribute towards. In 1998, first elected Chief Secretary, remember we matriculated from Chairman to Chief Secretary, through EC Minute 152 of June 8, 1998, established a pension scheme in the Unit Trust Corporation. So when we started this, in 1996, that first term, the pension scheme was at the Unit Trust Corporation. But that pension scheme does not take into consideration members who served prior to 1996. There is no consideration for members who served prior to 1996. Much later, the government changed, and when the government changed, there were some difficulties with members getting their payouts from the Unit Trust. Members had to write, the THA had to write, there was a long lull between you writing and applying to get your monies out of the Unit Trust plan to actually getting your monies. So it was not the most efficient. And then we moved to what we actually have today. What we have today is that all members present, and every member since 1996, has been contributing to quote-unquote pension scheme. Madam Presiding Officer, what actually happens is that the monies we contribute, Madam Presiding Officer, those monies actually are placed in an account at First Citizens Bank. It is actually a savings account at the bank. So in other words, the monies that we all deduct from our salaries that is supposed to be in this pension is not really and truly going into a pension scheme. It is really and truly going into a savings account. There are no external entities managing the pension of members of the house. So the monies that we pay just goes into this account in FCB. And what actually happens is that the Tobago House of Assembly, we pay members this so-called pension under a line item called payments of superannuation benefits to former assemblymen. So we essentially take the monies from members as they contribute, just put it in a savings account, and then take monies from our allocation and just pay members. That's what obtains now. So even what we contribute is not going into any scheme, such as what you will have if you go and you sign up for your own pension at an insurance, that it will grow over time. Every month you put a little something, and then you know at a particular age you start to withdraw, and it will grow and it will be larger than what you put in. That doesn't happen. It's literally a case of what we put in going into our account at FCB, staying there safely, and we from our allocations, meaning the teacher from the allocations, paid the agreed amounts every month to members past. Based on the current plan that we have, one is pensionable from age 50, or should one become ill, significantly ill prior to that, one must serve a period of 6 years minimum before you could start getting a pension. But while that exists for members serving between 1996 and present, nothing exists for those who served prior to 1996. So, in theory, you could have served for 4 terms, or perhaps 20 years, prior to 1996. Once you did not serve after 1996, there is literally silence about how you ought to be treated. And that was the genesis of this motion from the Executive Council. More than that, we recognize that the matter of allowances and salaries for members of this House can only be dictated by 2 things, either the law or from the SRC, the Salary Review Commission. Currently, between 1996 and present, the law dictates how members ought to receive some pension benefits. Simply put, the THA must decide what those benefits are, and it should be one where the members contribute towards it. Prior to 1996, again, silence. And so we have drafted a motion that's hopefully broad enough that 2 main things can happen. One, it can trigger us having, beyond this debate, the necessary backroom sit-down discussions, planning the use of an actuary to go through what could be the best possible long-term deal and arrangement. But also, it gives us the opportunity to sit and to later on carefully craft a bill to send down to Parliament. And that's if that becomes necessary, should we not get our autonomy in a timely manner. I want to perhaps go to the place where the Assemblyman Hackett was at the beginning of her presentation. And I don't know if some members think that it may not be a genuine feeling. I can tell you for a fact there is a former assemblyman who sometime last month WhatsApped me in error. He claimed it is an error. It was a WhatsApp message asking if I know of anyone who can come to actually kill some yard fowl that he has and prepare them. So when I saw the message, but this is a strange message for the Chief Secretary. I said, anyhow, let me engage. The former member, he then said that, look, this was an error. It wasn't meant for me, it was meant for someone else. I mean, I did organize some hampers and so on to send to him, and every month I organize to send some hampers on my own behalf to his household. This is a former member who has a wife that is ill and has dementia. He has some mobility challenges, so he can't earn any income on his own. And whatever benefits were received for the short periods that he taught, they are all gone, and then he's now living essentially hand to mouth. This is someone who served this island. This is someone who was instrumental in the establishment of perhaps the longest running indigenous cultural program on the island. This is someone who at one point taught our children. And it really cannot be fair to them. But I want to amend the motion to ensure that we have some arrangements going forward that will benefit all and sundry. And before I propose the amendments, Madam Presiding Officer, I want to say this quite clearly and slowly. I know for the public tends to believe, and you have to forgive the public and agree with them at times, tends to believe that perhaps we get paid too much. Politicians generally get paid too much. Every time there is a raise in salary for politicians, then or benefits, anytime that question arises, the public has a visceral response to it. And you have to understand, because on one hand, we can't say to the public, you are only entitled to 4% and then raise ours significantly more than that. It's not equitable. But it's not a case of this executive coming to the House to try to just maximize the benefits for those of us who are here. We could easily leave this motion limited only to those who have challenges prior to 1996. But we are now realizing that there's some members post-1996 who are no longer in this House who have a challenge and who receive no benefits at this time. And is one of the reasons why I will want to propose from on this floor that if the minority leader and the minority assemblyman are so inclined, this is a matter that we could meet, go through, and come up with what that benefit should be, and how the arrangements should be pitched, both for those prior to 1996 and those who served post-1996 but did not quite serve 6 years and right now need some kind of assistance. And so the amendments, Madam Presiding Officer, that I wish to place on the record are as follows. The first amendment is to insert the words, but other members have experienced gaps and limitations in access to such benefits at the end of the second recital. The second amendment is to insert the words, and further inequities have arisen for other members throughout the history of the Assembly. And this is to ensure we capture everybody who might be having a challenge as we speak. The third is to leave out the words that now benefit their successor at the end of the fifth recital, and insert the words, or by other circumstances that have limited their access to retirement benefits. The fourth amendment will be to insert the words "from its inception to the present" at the first resolution, and after the word "assembly," and that the word "support" be left out of the first resolution, and add the word "benefits" at the end of the resolution. The fifth amendment, Madam Presiding Officer, is to leave out the words "appropriate retirement provisions" at the end of the second resolution, after the word "provide," and insert the words "interim support." To leave out the words "ensuring that their service is duly recognized," and insert the words "and calls on the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago to enact necessary legislative amendments that guarantees parity in retirement benefits between members of the Assembly and members of Parliament" at the end of the motion. And so, Madam Presiding Officer, when we add all of those proposed amendments, the motion essentially will now read as follows: whereas Section 16(5) of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996 provides that the Assembly shall, in accordance with the financial rules made under Section 52, establish a contributory pension scheme for members, and whereas such a contributory pension scheme has since been implemented for current and recent members of the Assembly, thereby affording them structured retirement benefits, but other members have experienced gaps and limitations in access to such benefits, and whereas former members of the Assembly, before the establishment of the contributory pension scheme, were not eligible to participate, and as a result do not enjoy the retirement benefits equivalent to those now available, and further inequities have arisen for other members throughout the history of the Assembly, and whereas this inequity leaves former members of the Assembly without adequate pension arrangements despite their years of service to the people of Tobago, and whereas it is a fundamental principle of fairness and good governance that those who have held elected office should not be disadvantaged by the timing of reforms or by other circumstances that have limited their access to retirement benefits, be it resolved that this House, this Honourable House, affirms that all who have served as members of the Assembly from inception to present should have access to fair and reasonable retirement retirement benefits, and be it further resolved that this House supports the Executive Council in its efforts to provide interim support for former members of the Assembly who were not part of the contributory pension scheme, and calls on the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago to enact the necessary legislative amendments that guarantees parity in retirement benefits between or among members of the Assembly. That's how the motion will now be read, Madam Presiding Officer, and I now beg to move that these amendments be considered by the House.
Is there a seconder for these amendments?
Madam Presiding Officer, I second the amendment of the motion.
The amendment to the motion has been seconded by Councillor Petalan Roberts. Honourable members, the question is that the motion be amended by, first amendment, to insert the words "but other members have experienced gaps and limitation in access to such benefits" at the end of the second recital. Second amendment, to insert the words "and further inequities have risen for other members throughout the history of the Assembly," at the ending of the third recital, third amendment, to leave out the words that now benefit their successors at the end of the fifth recital and insert or by other circumstances that have limited their access to retirement benefits. Fourth amendment, to insert the words from its inception to the present at the first resolution after the word assembly and that word support, and that the word support be left out of the first resolution and add the word benefits at the end of the resolution. Fifth amendment, to leave out the words appropriate retirement provisions at the second resolution after the word provide and insert the words interim support. To leave out the words ensuring that their service is duly recognized and insert the words and calls on the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago to enact necessary legislative amendments that guarantees parity in retirement benefits between members of the Assembly and members of Parliament at the end of the motion. Members, those who are now taking part in this debate may speak on the original motion or the proposed amendments. Member for Darrell Springwim, you may now join this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And before I commence my presentation, I want to extend to the Chief Secretary and his close relative, wishing his close relative a speedy recovery, because ultimately, Madam Presiding Officer, above the politics, we are Tobagonians first. So I just wanted to place that on the record of the House.
Before we continue, one moment. I see that we are joined by some very special members in the gallery. May we recognize Member for Parliament for Tobago West, Mr. Joel Sampson, Member for Parliament for Tobago East, Mr. David Thomas, and most importantly, our two former members of this House, to which this very critical motion is important too. Former Member for Roxboro de la Ford, Mr. Regis Caruth, and current liaison coordinator in the Office of the Prime Minister, and more importantly, former minority leader, Mr. Ashworth Jack. You may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, and I join in also recognizing the distinguished members. Madam Presiding Officer, with your leave, I would like to refresh my memory using some of my notes.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, I rise not to oppose fairness for our former members of this Honorable House, but to affirm that fairness must be pursued in a way that is lawful, that is transparent, and fiscally responsible. Because you see, Madam Presiding Officer, while also protecting the trust of the people of Tobago. Let me say this at the very outset. I have no interest in standing in the way of those who have served being recognized. But I must also make it clear that as legislators, our job is to protect principle over privilege. Yes, we all have an interest in this discussion, but that is precisely why we must approach this matter dispassionately, ensuring the principle is about fairness and not about self-servitude. Madam Presiding Officer, and I just want to make from the outset some observations of the original motion that was presented. I note with concern that the presenter, the member for Bethesda Lekoto, failed in her research to show global precedents, Commonwealth precedents, etc., in matters of similar nature and how those matters were treated with. We got a lot of anecdotal, of course, the emotional, but in terms of what occurs in matters of this across parliaments, those examples weren't really brought to the fore by the presenter. Madam Presiding Officer, I also note that while we are talking about retirement benefits, at this point in time in the debate, no structured proposal has been placed on the floor at this time. So it appears to me that the conversation remains quite open and broad. And I'm saying if that is the situation, why bring the motion here when the best place for a conversation of that nature is the House Committee? Because you see, the House Committee, as the standing orders would have identified, is the place where we discuss, according to Standing Order 75-1, the House Committee shall consider and advise the presiding officer upon all matters connected with the comfort and convenience of members, and every 4 months report to the Assembly on its minutes of proceedings. And Madam Presiding Officer, I am a member of the House Committee, and I can say here without fear of contradiction that as important this matter is, it was and has never been raised nor discussed. And therefore, my simple question to the administration, who is about 3 months on their way out, why now? Madam Presiding Officer, I note as well the presentation, as I said, was very emotive. The member even was brought to tears. But I wondered out loud, where were those tears when hundreds of Tobagonians were summarily fired by this administration with only 1 month, Madam Presiding Officer, salary? They weren't even allowed the opportunity to get gratuity.
Member relevance?
Madam Presiding Officer, we are talking about compensation.
To former members of the House, please stay on the substantive motive.
I am extending it to all Tobagonians because at the end of the day, we are
Assemblyman Morris, please stay on the substantive motion at hand. Continue.
Madam Presiding Officer, I want you to appreciate that I represent a body of people, not just the former politicians. I represent all of Tobago, and therefore everything that I place to the fore.
Assemblyman Morris, if you are so inclined to speak to, no, you could have a seat, to speak to matters concerning persons you represent, you can more than bring a motion to speak to that. But for today, please keep to the substantive motion at hand. Thank you.
Madam Presiding Officer, as I said before, it is in the context of how we treat with some as opposed to others. And I'm simply saying, if we are dealing with former members and we can cry to the fact that former members weren't treated fairly, I'm also saying, where were those tears for other Tobagonians who also equally was not treated fairly? That's all I'm saying, Madam Presiding.
And I'm saying stick to the substantive motion.
I thank you and I move on. Madam Presiding Officer, the very wording of this motion reveals serious inconsistencies and constitutional flaws. And the first one I would like to point out is the fact that the Act of 1996, which governs this Assembly, speaks specifically to a contributory pension scheme. Nowhere does it speak of a retirement benefit, and I notice the motion in its current form really focuses on retirement benefit. And in this motion, words matter. Because you see, there's a difference between a pension and a retirement benefit, and therefore we must be clear in how we treat with those. Because a pension is something, in this case, as per the THA Act, is a contributory pension. It is structured, it is actuarially sound, and it is based on payments made by members and by the state. A retirement benefit, on the other hand, does not require have such stringent requirements. Secondly, Madam Presiding Officer, no motion of this Assembly can create a pension entitlement where none exists. If members genuinely wish to create a new category of benefit, which it seems that as though we want to go in that direction, a retirement benefit as opposed to a pension benefit, then it is based on the advice I've received, the only lawful path is legislation through the national parliament. Anything less will create false expectations, undermines the constitutionality of those steps, and invites, as I said, future constitutional challenge. Third, Madam Presiding Officer, this motion has some serious inconsistencies. In one breath, we speak to elected members as the recital in the original motion, and both the original and amended motion said that it is a fundamental principle of fairness and good governance that those who have held elected office, and in our case, if you hold elected office in this House, you're referring to assemblyman. If you're talking about the entire House, which includes you, Madam Presiding Officer, that holds appointed selected positions, then we are talking about assembly members. And therefore, it is important that we establish who this motion, or who are the people covered in this motion, because in one breath we are saying all members, and in the other breath we are making arguments specifically to elected members of the House or elected office. All right, and that, under the current arrangement, if you're speaking to elected office holders, you will be leaving out your councillors. Madam Presiding Officer, and this also is fundamental because, as I said, we need to be clear as to who and the scope of this motion. There's another inconsistency that in the resolutions where we talk about former members, but I'm sure I heard at some point the Chief Secretary saying that this may very well, as the conversations go forward, cover current members. So we can't be resolving to ensure that we treat with a matter to basically affect former members, but at the same time, we are also having conversations that says it may very well include current members. So we have to be clear. I'll caution that we need to be clear as to what we are really trying to do. Madam Presiding Officer, it's also important to note in the historical context that members and let the public know that members of this assembly have never been left without provision. So it is not that members did not receive some kind of benefit, but we are speaking specific to pensionable benefits at this time, because before the two presentations before, I'm not too sure, indicated or outlined clearly that those members to which we speak to, unlike many of the contract workers who were terminated, did receive some gratuity payments. And so before the pension scheme was introduced and properly operationalized in 2007, based on the information I have, former members would have received a gratuity payment. Of course, following the implementation, members who serve based on the superannuation benefits manual, members who serve at least 6 years and make their contributions are entitled to a pension. Those who serve fewer than 6 years continue to receive a gratuity. So whether through gratuity or through pension, members have always had some form of compensation. So let us not give the impression that members weren't compensated. The argument could be, are they adequately compensated? That is left for discussion. But let it not be said that former members weren't compensated. The real issue now, based on what I understand the issue to be, is that individuals who served before 2009 are claiming entitlement to pensions, even though they didn't contribute. But we are talking about contributory pensions at this time. But the law is clear. This is a contributory pension scheme. So no contribution under this current arrangement means no pension. Madam Presiding Officer, again, with respect to the motion as revised, I spoke about the retirement benefit and my concerns there in terms of replacing pension and us needing to be very clear as to what we are trying to do. I also would want to look at the process, and I started early in my observation as indicating, because I know the move of the motion mentioned about speaking to the member from Roxboro. But I'm saying if we really want to be inclusive and ensuring that we get everybody on board, I wondered if I wear horns on my head because the member failed to reach out to me. Madam Presiding Officer, so I wonder, because she was clear who she spoke to. She was clear. The public heard her say she spoke to the member from Roxboro, and she did not mention reaching out to me. So I'm just passing on that. So I don't want to labor on that point too much. But
Madam Presiding Officer, I really don't want it to body Hansan that we did not speak. Minority leader, I sent you a WhatsApp message. We had a full conversation. I spoke to you about the amendments. We agreed. I told you it's going to come through the presiding officer, but I respected you enough to reach out to you. Why are you putting it on record that we did not speak? As a matter of fact, I spoke to Assemblyman Duke, speaking to him, letting him know that I reached out to the minority leader first, and I'm granting him the same courtesy. Isn't that correct?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Madam Presiding Officer, and I'm being clear, this is an issue that speaks as pension. She said she spoke specifically to the member on the arrangements. We had, Madam Presiding Officer, I received a WhatsApp. Let me just clear it up, because she cleared her side. I received a WhatsApp asking me if we can move from, because we are speaking about the entire House, we want to make one amendment, which is to change Assemblyman to members of the Assembly, and I gave way to that. I said, no problem. I then received a call. Yeah.
I know that we are debating, but I don't want us to lose track of the essence of this motion and make it a tit-for-tat thing between Leader of Assembly Business and Minority Leader. Okay, so let's go back to what we're actually here for and continue your presentation.
Madam Presiding Officer, I think this is very important that I clear it up, because I know the others on the other side, and they would want to try to make me out of misrepresenting the truth. And I'm here to put the truth on record.
And as Assemblyman Morris, I just said that I don't want us to lose the essence of this motion in something as trivial of who reached out to who.
No. But Madam Presiding,
what was discussed. We all know that via standing orders that the Leader of Assembly Business and the Minority Leader could have agreements, and this could happen post-debate. Correct? So continue with your presentation, please.
Yes. Okay, so I just want to lay out how this motion unfolded. I received a call thereafter on...
Members, please. Minority Leader.
Madam
Mr. Assemblyman Morris. Please, let's not do this right now.
Madam Presiding Officer, it is important for me to lay out the series of issues that led to this, and I think it's unfair that I'm not being allowed.
And I am saying, Assemblyman Morris, yes. I hear you.
So why can't
I hear you, but I would prefer that you continue with your presentation.
Madam Presiding Officer, this is important to my presentation because I received a call on Monday indicating that there will be a meeting between myself, the Leader of Assembly Business, and the clerk. And that meeting never happened. And therefore, it is in that context I am saying the member and I, Mr. Duke, had the luxury of having a full conversation with the member. Oh.
Minority Leader.
Okay, good.
Minority Leader. as per standing order of this House, the Leader of Assembly Business and the Minority Leader could have agreements. Please continue. We all understand that this could happen after this debate. Please continue with your presentation.
Madam Presiding Officer, I promise you, they and their cronies will use this.
No. I know you're well aware of the standing orders that you cannot call a member outside of their names.
I never call.
Okay, so the respect for members in this House should be upheld. Let's not get carried away with the emotions and the theatrics of the House. Please continue your presentation.
Madam Presiding Officer, the process, and I hope I'm getting some injury time because my presentation was interrupted. Equally concerning is the process. It was, as I mentioned, this motion in any Commonwealth Parliament, a matter with constitutional and financial implications would be referred to the House Committee. And the question we have to ask, why is it not happening in this instance? That committee would clarify definitions. It would study precedents that they are now proposing to do. It would study the costs, options, and it will have some consultation with stakeholders because this matter is not just about assembly members. It is about all of Tobago. And therefore, this matter requires some level of consultation if we care about the people of Tobago. That is what proper process looks like. Instead, what we see here thus far seems to be rushed and seems to be very convoluted. Madam Presiding Officer, we must be honest about the timing of this motion as well. As I mentioned, this House is about to reach its natural end on December the 6th. And we had, if we were genuine about this, you had 2022, you had 2023, you had 2024, and the early parts of 2025 to treat with this matter that a member broke down in tears about, yet it was not dealt with. But on the cusp of going out of office, this administration is, because people, when I share the motion with Tobagonians, they're saying, but this thing here look like a fix-up for them. That is what Tobagonians are saying to me. And that is why we have to be so careful in how we go about this, because there are rumors. I am a good friend from Scarborough, Mount Grace, not going back. That is not for me to decide.
Member relevance. Members. Members. Honorable members. Please allow Assemblyman Morris to...
So, Madam President, because there might be those murmurings in the space, we have to be very careful about the intention of this motion and the timing especially, because for some it may just look like a parting handshake. Madam Presiding Officer, and what about hypocrisy? And I raise hypocrisy in this case because I follow the campaign of my colleagues quite closely for the general election. And that SRC report was one of those issues that they took to the public of Tobago in a major way. And you would note, Madam Presiding Officer, that the thing about that SRC report is that it was a proposal from an independent body, state body, institution. Yet our members, because the government of the time accepted it, our members basically sold it to the people as them being heartless. So they take all for them and 4% for you. That is what was said. And therefore, Madam Presiding Officer, this is the context I was speaking about before. In this situation where it may appear to some Tobagonians that the members are now trying to secure their pension while we have many Tobagonians, we have contract workers, Madam Presiding Officer, who all they get is a gratuity, no pension. There's a situation with daily paid workers, Madam Presiding Officer. They work up to 60 years with no pension. There are other people in the system who are not pensionable, and therefore, in this situation,
I'd like to stand on a point of clarity.
Madam Presiding Officer, this is the second time she's interrupting me. I'm not giving way, and I have to give way.
Point of clarity, Madam
I'm
Presiding
not giving way. I'm not giving way. You had your chance, and you will be wrapping up.
Okay, Assemblyman Morris, your
will-
presentation is timed.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Madam Presiding Officer, I'm talking about the hypocrisy and how it could be viewed by the public. That here it is, you had the world to say about the SRC report, but you now coming in a situation to fix up yourself. And therefore, we have to be very careful.
Minority Leader, I'm going to caution you. What you're kind of insinuating is misleading, could be deemed as misleading. So
Madam,
please on the side of caution.
Madam President, I am just representing what is said to me by the people of Tobago. When I show them the motion, they are saying to me, it looks like they are fixing up themselves. That is what they are saying. And
That's outside the House without the guidelines that we operate by. Please be cautious of what you are saying.
I will move on. What about the global precedent, Madam Presiding Officer? Across the Commonwealth, Madam Presiding Officer, can I seek your protection? I'm hearing murmurings.
Members, please stand in order. No interruptions when a member is on his feet making a presentation. Please continue. Please continue, Assemblyman Morris.
I have a wife. I don't want you. Madam Presiding Officer, across the Commonwealth, in Britain, Canada, and the Caribbean, parliamentary pensions are most times contributory, and I'll share one example on how it was dealt with. Members pay in, the state matches and benefits are determined by contribution. Madam Presiding Officer, that is because retroactivity undermines fiscal responsibility and destroys public trust. Madam Presiding Officer, I'm aware that in St. Kitts and Nevis, there was a provision for non-contributing members to benefit from the pension scheme that was established. But how was that done? That was done by making an amendment to the Constitution itself and having a clause placed there that covers non-contributing members. And this is why I'm saying in this instance, if we genuinely want to treat with our former members, this motion will have to involve the Parliament. Madam Presiding Officer, a better way forward, and the way I propose, is one, for us to not be so rush in this instance, but to consider having this matter sent for urgent attention of the House Committee, where we can examine the history of gratuities and pensions in the THA, consider comparative precedents across the Commonwealth, assess the actuarial costs, consult with unions, workers, and other stakeholders, and it is only then we can achieve fairness while protecting the law and public trust. And to the Chief Secretary's caveat that he does not mind sitting with the member for Roxboro and myself as minority leader for us to hash out these issues, I would say this. More than just the pension for a few, I would also want to have a conversation with him as to how we treat fairly with the other Tobagonians who were fired and who had little to nothing to go on with. They are court matters. And I would say let us settle those matters as well by paying them what the court said to pay them. And I would sit down and let us have a full conversation.
Member.
So,
thank you.
So, Madam Presiding Officer, it is in those contexts I would have the conversation. And as I close, I want to make it pellucidly clear that my position is as follows, and I want it to be noted. I am not against fairness. I am not against recognizing those who have served, but I am against misrepresenting the act, creating loopholes, rewarding persons who may not be properly within this current superannuation plan, and elevating the interests of a few above the people of Tobago. This motion, both motions, the original and the amended motion, as they are currently drafted, is not about fairness. It is more about confusion, inconsistency, and self-interest. The right course is clear. Refer this matter to the House Committee. Let fairness be achieved through proper process, not opportunism. Madam Presiding Officer, Tobago deserves better. I thank you.
Assemblyman Duke, you may now join this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, and thank you, Secretary for Education. You did bring something that is worthwhile today, and it's never too late to do good. I wish to remind my colleague on my right, Minority Leader, it's never too late to do good. You cannot compare someone who has retired with someone who is currently working. Retired means that you are packed up and there's no chance of you getting work based on the cut and trust of the system. And so therefore retirement serves as a social benefit or as a social blanket, something to protect that man, that woman at an age when their health might be failing, their strength might be failing, and a number of other things might be failing. It's not a good position to be in, especially when your money is failing. I read a good book from time to time. I enjoy reading it. And I recall reading, Madam Presiding Officer, in the book of Proverbs, it says money answereth all things. And I pause and I digest that. So I know to the assemblyman, woman, or councillor who would have worked from 1980 to 1996, perhaps 15 years straight, and got no support in his old age. To him, money will answer a lot of things. And so I support the bill in full. However, I wish to engage in a little bit of education, as I like to do from time to time. And allow me, if you will, Madam Presiding Officer, to point out that there is a stark difference between the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the Tobago House of Assembly. Point number one, the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, they are bounded by the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. In a real sense, they are the law. They make the law. This is why at the end of most laws, you will see a very short statement that says, this act binds the state. Even the state is bound to follow on the law. The Tobago House of Assembly, on the other hand, is a corporate body, which means it operates like WASA, T&TEC, yeah? PTSC, and most recently Petrotrin, which was state-owned. They are guided by the law, but they are not bounded by the law insofar as pension is concerned. Let me repeat that more quickly for those who like song bites. I may want to say, teacher could break the law. I'm saying the THA is a corporate body. And just like Petrotrin, just like Tiantec have their own pension scheme, yeah? They can create their own pension scheme in accordance with the law, and I'll get to that just now. So I wish to do a little bit of education, because we think we have to go to Trinidad for this. No, no, no. You're putting powers into the hand of Trinidad that they do not have over us. Maybe I should just hit it and spit it one time, like Big Papa. Let me say this to you. Under Section 25, subsection 1, it is written in the Tobago House of Assembly Act, Section 40, Act 40 of 1996, that the House of Assembly is a corporate body. Everybody say that word with me. Corporate body. A corporate body. Body, corporate body. Man, whatever the case may be. It's a corporate body. And as such, Madam Presiding Officer, we are entitled to hire, fire, to hold real assets, personal assets. You know how it goes. I'm breaking it down for the average man here. Just like Tiantec Petrotrin, yeah? To sue or be sued. So the THA could sue people. The THA as a body can sue people and be sued as a body. So when my good friend talk about these workers who were displaced and they sue the THA, they have a right to do so. They can sue the THA. Right? The first point I want to raise. The second point I want to raise is under Section 61 of the THA Act. Everybody write that down. Section 61. You'll have to defend this thing, you know. Section 61 of the THA Act. It allows the THA the power to set terms and conditions of all persons within its employ. The last time I checked, all of us is within the employ of the THA, and we can set our terms and conditions. Right? I happen to be a trade union leader for a greater part of my adult life. And I think I was literally one of the best in my time and yet to be rivaled by any upcomer. I create laws, I set laws, I interpret laws. That's what I did in my time, to protect the workers. And one of the things we did when we negotiate is to always look for things better than what exists and operate outside of the law. So, I want to go into the workers' benefits, but then that might expose them. But I say we set big benefits for workers, because when we agree with the CPO and we sign it off, that comes as a law that is placed in the industrial court and registered, and that supersedes the law insofar as benefits. Right? So when we sit here and we come up with terms and conditions, which is what our late great comrade Huchai Charles did in 1996, he understood the law to a great extent. All right? And so they set out to create this book, this green book, money book, called Member Superannuation Benefit Regulations. This didn't go to Trinidad, you know. They sit and they agree what the terms and terms of employment and conditions of service were. And then when it's done, they drop it like it's hot. They say we're establishing a fund in unit trust. Them days unit trust now come up and unit trust bubbling. And they say members will contribute 5%, and the THA, which is a corporate body, will contribute 15%. Yeah? Now we today have a responsibility to take this where it is and improve it. Because every generation has a responsibility to do better than the previous generation. So you take the good and you press on. Today, this is what my colleague, Secretary Zorisha Hackett, Secretary for Education, is seeking to improve on it. Where the loophole was, she's trying to patch it up and say, let's press on with this. So we have the right to create terms and conditions. The next thing that we have under the fifth schedule, remember the fifth schedule that lists 33 areas? Under Area 8 and Area 14, we have the authority over finance, yeah, over planning, and over social welfare. As I said, pension deals with the Tobago House of Assembly's social responsibility to those who have worked. Allow me to go a little deeper and draw a comparison. For the sake of provocation, to those who may be saying that them people in Assembly want money, let me tell you this. Tobago is a very small place, and the workforce, everybody knows everybody. But the most difficult and painful thing in Tobago is that when you finish a career of politics, if your opposing party is on the next side and they wish not for you to have employment, every single application put forward will come back empty. No work for you. And you will find yourself between pillar and post, getting frustrated, can't pay your bills. And not everybody may be resourceful. Some of us are resourceful, some are not. And therefore, they become in a precarious position, as some former assemblymen are. It's not a good state to be in. So therefore, these kind of political work are very serious work. They are work where you put your life on the line and your family life on the line. It's almost a painful thing to see a politician who is driving around in luxury vehicles today is pushing a cart by the road tomorrow. It doesn't happen just to politicians. Many famous stars have run broke. From basketball, football, they run broke. Losing money could happen overnight for any reason. And what this pension seeks to do is to create equity, fairness, and some level of parity with our colleagues in Trinidad. Let me drop it like it's hot. In Trinidad, after 60 months, after 7 years, based on the Retiring Allowance Act, they collect a maximum of 33%, of 2/3 of their salary and a reduced pension, which is 66% of their final salary. Are you hearing me? Write that down. After 60 months, they collect a maximum, if they choose to, of 66% of their salary. And mind you, that is a non-contributory pension. They don't contribute a cent. Yeah? Because the law states that. And they go by that. We, at our maximum cap, but we can't go no further, we get 55%. But here when we get that, you have to make 10 years, or you have to make 120 months. That's the kind of wickedness that we are seeking to correct today. Hear me? If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. And so this is more than just those who we left out of the loop. This is for those who are in the loop. I am saying that we need to level up. We need to ensure that if we are talking self-determination, if we are talking ability for the state of Tobago to make decisions for itself, then we who are leading it must not place ourselves and our family at risk should we try and fail to achieve what we want to achieve and then exit office. We must ensure that when we are fighting, we don't fight with the worry of an unfortunate tomorrow. So I'm saying we need to bring the pension up. And we are contributing, and we can do that. So you have to work with, I'm the most senior person inside here than my colleague Farrell, because I got appointed before him, of course. You know that? So I'm the most senior man. Insofar as he has a service. He holds more money than me, he's richer than me. Of course, you see how he dress? He's far richer than me. And I accept that. And I accept that. Right? But insofar as years of service, Madam President, I'm the most senior man. Right? I'm the most senior man. And if we are to leave today, our pension will be less than someone who just joined the parliamentary caucus in Trinidad or with city government in Trinidad and resigned. Far less. Insofar as numbers and insofar as sense, sense meaning sense-wise. We have to correct that. We should propose, if they are making one term, which is 60 months, if they are making one term 60 months and receive a maximum of 66%, from a non-contributory pension, we who are contributing 5% of our salary, we ought to receive the same 66%, and we are contributing. We must receive that. We can't start arguing for Tobago's equality if we are not equal. Yes, there was a time when I believed when you have to eat last, right? And let others eat first. Until I saw a man try to do that. And by the time I come to feed him, he fainted away and went to hospital, you know. You know that? He started eating last. And everybody eating, man. They take long to feed everybody, 20 people there. And the man eats for the morning. By the time I come to feed him, that came to hospital, his drips, he get him with drips. So people don't want the leaders dead. They want them alive. And this is why when they're in office, they spend so much money protecting them, feeding them, giving them gym. Look at how far he's looking in pink health. Eh? Pink health. When he was on this side, he was like a figure one. I used to hug him up with one hand twice. One hand used to hug him twice and hug him up. Spin him around like that, but no, can't hug him. Best of health. Best. Watch them. Best. We are saying on this side, we want equity. Point number one. Our next point is that, so we'll look at the years of service one, where they are working for one term and they get full pension. We must work for 1 term and a half. All right? We need to change that. Equity. We are working for 10 years to get 55%. All they need is 5 years and they get 66%. We need to change that. Insofar as the legality is, we don't need to go to Trinidad. Let me tell you, negotiations, you don't give people away your rights. You don't give people your rights in negotiations. Anytime you do that, you're lost. You don't ever get back. Because it's a precedent. We need not go to Trinidad on this. This is a matter that allows us, as I said, based on the THA Act 40 of 1996, Section 25(1), write it down. Yes? We look at Section 66, write that down, that's the terms and conditions. Yeah? And the next one was the rights under Schedule 5. Point number 8 and point number 14 for check it in like that. 1, 2, 3. The 8th point and the 14th area gives us that right. Today, as I wrap up, I don't want the points to be lost at all. I want to make sure I get all the points here. I want to say I feel honored to be in this house and to correct this injustice. It has to stop. It has to stop. We don't want to water down or compromise what we are doing with those who have been fired. Those who have been fired by the THA, they will have a date very shortly to treat with that, which is the election, which you can look at the THA's contract and say, look, whether they want to redo it or not. But you do not want to compare what we are doing inside here with those persons who have been fired. Let me tell you this again. Remember the man who said, feed everybody first, and then was drips feeding him. When you retire, you will not be able to get employment almost anywhere. You have to look for work. And my last point. In the Retirement Allowance Act, let me see if I could pull it up here. I like to speak from my head, but I want to make sure I get it right here. I have to find the correct area. In fact, I will not make that point. I want to make sure I get that point correct properly before I drop it out here. But we have to protect it. The Prime Minister, for example, of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, whosoever he or she is, when that person leaves office, they collect their pension right away without regard to age. You know why? That person has obtained the highest office and hardly will find a work outside in the government service or any service. You see, our former Prime Minister said he's going to go and practice geology. You want to keep his skills sharp. That's his choice. And I see where he's going, quite up the islands. Quite up the, if we don't have money to buy a ticket, we're going. He's quite up the islands, going to study geology. Again, I will want that my colleagues around this table, including minority leader, as when we leave office, be it today or tomorrow, you must be able to have receipt of your pension immediately. There must be no delay with that. This is not a grandstanding thing to say you're looking nice with people and you want to eat last. Drips can pick you up. Drips can pick all you up. I mean, I'm the most senior Mike will say, well, yeah, all the suffer. Put it for 6 years. Or you'll come back here again next time. But it will be wrong and inhumane for me to do that. These politics things are very divisive thing in Tobago. You know, during political time, Madam Presiding Officer, husband and wife sometimes don't talk because one is PDP and one is an ex-scholar. You know? This happens sometimes. Politics are a very fierce thing. And therefore, when we're discussing this pension, you must bear in mind we are all political animals, meaning loosely, not animals. But when we fight, we're fighting. When Farley fighting me, and when I fighting him. All right? But when we come out here, after this, we have to live and maintain our family. I charge this house today to understand the power that is vested in us. We don't have to go to Trinidad first. Go by a law and ask any lawyer for this. And let's correct this injustice to the former assemblymen, women, councillors, whosoever would have worked and did not benefit to benefit. But let us have a house committee, or I will say the finance committee. The finance committee, for those who don't know, comprises of all of us. Whenever we sit at a house, we sit as a finance committee and everybody. So we can have a meeting as this, where we sit down to discuss our own terms and conditions, which is our next meeting, and agree to it. Yeah, thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Hope you all have all those notes down, or get the tape.
We are about 15 minutes off of the break, 4:30 break. Leader of Assembly Business, do we sit and complete the business for the day, or do we break at 4:30 for lunch?
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that this House remain seated until the business of the Assemblyman for Buku, Mount Pleasant.
No, the business of the day.
Oh, for the entire
Day, yes.
We will remain seated until the business on the order paper have been completed.
Honorable members, the question is that we remain seated until the business of this House is complete. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? Say no. The ayes have it. Assemblyman Craig, you may now join this debate.
Yeah, man. Let me be one of the first to. No, it's quite. Thanks, yes, thanks. You shouldn't have. Lovely. Yeah, so once again, I must, as I have this opportunity to address this august body to say how thankful I am to the people of Buku, Mount Pleasant, and Canaan for entrusting me with the confidence to stand in this house. It's by the grace of Almighty God that we are all spared to be able to speak in the interest of building the greatest little island on the planet. I have the honor of following the member from Roxboro, but before he spoke, I heard some inconsistencies that I think I should mention, yeah? Coming from the member from WIM, right? He asked some hard questions, but it's a simple question. He says, why now? And I asked him, why not now? He says, why didn't we bring it in 2022? And you would hear in the Chief Secretary's presentation of communication he has had with former assemblymen, which presented a kind of dire situation that demands that something be done. It will not be prudent for us as an administration to monitor the ebb and flow of the politics as a measuring stick as to when we should deal with matters that demand immediate attention. So the matter is before us. It's also interesting that the Chief Secretary in his presentation referenced that he's willing to have a conversation with the both arms of the minority in finalizing this conversation. It seems as though that flew over somebody's head. And I'm seeing where this seems to be one of the ways we definitely will have to go in dealing with this. In Section 16.5 of the THA Act, it rightly mandates the establishment of a contributory pension scheme for members, and that scheme has since been implemented, and current and recent members now benefit from structured retirement support. When I listen to the context and the content of this debate, it is clear that this is a necessary piece of administration for the Tobago House of Assembly and to benefit both present and especially past members of this House. There's an attempt to, at some times in our presentations, and I heard it with the member from Roxboro and also the member from Darrell Spring, to create a burdensome situation that is not necessarily a part of the conversation. This need not be a drawn-out situation. We recognize the need, and we have brought the plaster to deal with the proverbial sore. Those who served before the scheme existed, for some, but for those who served before the scheme existed, what of the pioneers of the Assembly who laid the foundation upon which we now stand? They gave their all. I had the privilege of speaking to assemblymen who had to return to trade after leaving their time as an assemblyman. They gave their time, their energy, their wisdom to the people of Tobago. Yet, today, they face retirement without the security that we now enjoy. That is not just an oversight, it is an injustice. We cannot allow the timing of reform to determine the worth of their service. We cannot say to those who led before us, you were too early to be valued. That is not the Tobago we believe in. That is not the governance we aspire to. It is my personal understanding that the calculations involved in quantifying fair value and the associated cost to be undertaken by the THA could be challenging, but these are incomparable to the contributions made by these former members of this august body. This resolution affirms a simple but powerful truth, that all who have served in this assembly deserve fair and reasonable retirement support. Simple. It is a call to dignity, it is a call to gratitude, and it is a call to action. Let us support the Executive Council in its efforts to right this wrong. Let us ensure that no former member is left behind. Let us ensure no future member is left behind. Let us recognize that service to Tobago, regardless of when it was rendered, is worthy of respect, recognition, and reward. Yes. Those of us who plow the fields at this time could attest to the fact that this job that we now enjoy and appears to be of a certain standing to the eyes of the average person is no easy feat. It's not an easy job. And I know that it's a job that we enjoy doing, but that doesn't make it easy. And to see that we function within the framework of precedents set by these same stalwarts who are struggling at this moment leaves us to think over and over and to conclude that we are going in the right direction by bringing this matter to this House. Madam Presiding Officer, I am never a long speaker. Even when I preach in the church, the members are happy. I preach on, man. You know, normally church services always go close to mealtime. But the situation before us is dire. And I'm saying that, and I'm supporting the move of the motion, the member for Lekoto, in this motion. It's a critical motion. Yes. Yeah, we need to take care of our own. Yes. We cannot have our own struggling, and we cannot have them just basic meals being a challenge. I must, in all fairness, say that I appreciate what I've heard before. I'm one of the people who never forget when the great late A.N.R. Robinson described the House and the shape of this desk as a place where ideas should be exchanged and not necessarily always be confrontational. And so I have to say it, Madam Presiding Officer, I urge all members, this is one motion I was of the view would have been passed very quickly. I was of the view that this motion would meet no resistance from any of the members of the minority. And I'm still saying that we have the majority in the House, and we are going to use that majority to the benefit of our retirees. But I'm hoping that we could see something new that we have never seen in the THA before. Well, I have not seen, where we could get all voices resoundingly voting in favor of this motion. I urge all members to stand in solidarity with this resolution, and let us decide not just with our voices, but with our values. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Assemblyman Wayne Clark, you may now join this debate.
Go ahead.
Madam Presiding Officer, Honorable Chief Secretary, Madam Presiding Officer, before I proceed, I ask for permission 47-2 to read, I should say, most of my presentation.
Granted.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Chief Secretary, Honorable Fali Chavez Augustine, Secretaries, Assistant Secretaries, Honorable members of this Assembly, distinguished colleagues, and most importantly, the constituents of Lambo Lowlands who have entrusted me with the honor of representing them. A pleasant good afternoon. Also in the public gallery, Pleasant good afternoon. Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to place on record in this House my profound delight at the posthumous recognition of Tobago's first Chief Secretary, the late Mr. Hochoy Charles, at this year's National Awards. His leadership, courage, and unwavering advocacy for Tobago's development continue to inspire us all, and his legacy on in this very institution that we serve today. Madam Presiding Officer, I rise in full support of the motion before this Honorable House. As a result, I wish to contribute to its consideration. As stated in the first paragraph of the motion, Section 16(5) of the Tobago House of Assembly Act No. 40 of 1996 provides that the Assembly shall, in accordance with the financial rules made under Section 52, establish a contributory pension scheme for members. This reinforced by Section 52 of the same Act. Section 52 states, within 2 months of the coming into force of this Act, the Assembly shall, subject to approval of the President, make such financial rules as necessary for the proper management of its finances, and such rules shall, when made, be laid in Parliament. Madam Presiding Officer, allow me to make reference to Dr. Rudal Moonilal, as he introduced and read a first time in the House of Representatives on June 6, 2014, the Retiring Allowances Legislative Service Amendment Bill 2014. The general principle behind the payment of pension to a member of Parliament is generated from the reluctance of some persons to serve as a parliamentarian because of the belief that long years spent in public service does not provide adequately for the sacrifice of public life. In addition, when elected, parliamentarians often sacrifice potential pension payouts from employers, and parliamentary demands severely reduce the chances of re-establishing careers when their parliamentary term ends. It is believed that the payment of a pension to members of Parliament would strengthen the parliamentary institution and attract qualified persons to public service. Madam Presiding Officer, the Tobago House of Assembly members' superannuation benefit regulations, which took effect from December 9, 1996, guide the payment of retiring allowances to members of this Assembly, and they have remained unchanged since the inception. By contrast, the Retiring Allowances Legislative Service Act Chapter 203 offers stronger provisions. According to the Act, legislator means a person who, A, is an elected member or, not being an elected member, is the holder of a specified legislative office. Retiring allowance means a retiring allowance payable pursuant to Section 5. Section 5 of the Act provides, Subject to the provisions of this Act, a retiring allowance shall be paid to any person who, A, has served as a legislator for periods amounting in aggregate to not less than 5 years and has ceased to be a legislator, and C, either 1, has attained the age of 55 years, or 2, not having attained the age of 55 years, it has produced medical evidence to the satisfaction of the appropriate minister that he is incapable by reason of infirmity of mind or body of discharging the duties of a legislator, and that such infirmity is likely to be permanent. In comparison, Section 5 of the Tobago House of Assembly Members' Superannuation Benefit Regulation states, 5(1), a pensioner shall be entitled to a pension under this section and payable in accordance with Section 8 of these regulations if he, A, has service amounting in aggregate to not less than 6 years and is not currently a member. And C, either 1, has attained the age of 55 years, or 2, while a member and below the age of 55 years, has produced medical evidence to the satisfaction of the Executive Council that he is incapable, by reason of infirmity of mind or body, of discharging his duties as a member. Madam Presiding Officer, the inequity is clear. Under Retiring Allowances, Legislative Services Act, Chapter 203, a legislator becomes eligible for retiring allowance after 5 years of parliamentary service. Yet, under the THA regulations, eligibility arises only after National Parliament can qualify. After THA regulations, eligibility arises only after 6 years, a term and a half. This means a member of our national parliament can qualify for a pension after a single term, but a member of this assembly is not so fortunate under existing regulations. Madam Presiding Officer, it clearly means that a member of the THA has to agree or try to get to serve 2 terms under the present construct to get a pension. It's sort of like a national insurance. If you don't make the number of payments, you get 1 payment when you end. And that is that. What we are asking for is simple: equity. Our members should not be treated as lesser. Their service to Tobago deserves the same recognition, protection, and dignity as that of their counterparts, legislators elsewhere in the Republic. Madam Presiding Officer, imagine the legislation being adjusted in Trinidad, yet no one thought to raise the matter to consider the members of this House. Today, under the leadership of our Honorable Chief Secretary, Farley Chavez Augustine, we are making that call for fairness, care, compassion, and justice. Just as this nation remembered Mr. Charles for his selfless service, so too must we remember and provide for those who gave of themselves in this assembly. I have no doubt that if Mr. Charles were alive today, he would be at the forefront of this very struggle, urging us to act decisively to correct the imbalance and to ensure that those who have served Tobago are not left behind. Madam Presiding Officer, I listened to all the contributions, and I always try to listen, but I always try to understand people's angle. Listening to the minority leader, is it that we have developed a politics in Tobago that you oppose or you say no just because you're not on the side that's saying yes? You oppose for opposing's sake. And to question the timing of the motion, I think that in this term, in whichever term we sit in this House, the first day is as important as the last day. That you need to work the same way the first day as the last day, because that's why you have a particular term, because all the days are important. The same decision you could make on the first day, you make it on the last day, and it shouldn't be thought of as you come in with an anger. People seem to think on the other side that we are making this decision because there's a pending election, or we have this motion because there's a pending election. You know, sometimes the reality of our situation in here is that, and I kind of want to outgrow saying people on the other side, you know. Every time the very things that the other side try to accuse everybody of is the things that they have perfected over the years. It's true. Can we actually sit here and say there's a particular time to do right? If you realize you're going wrong and it's time to change around, you prove that you're a man when you say I'm going wrong and then we change around. The people who went before us deserve to be treated right. It didn't matter. It might look away because we are in our 4th year of our 40 years. But somebody choose not to do it in their 21.
Right.
We are not alike in that aspect. The people who went before and slaved and sacrificed for Tobago deserve to be respected, they deserve to be recognized, and they deserve what is theirs. Yes. Be it before election, during an election, or after election, they slave and they should be recognized. So we should stop putting a political spin on everything that comes up in this house. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't get us nowhere. If you had done this in your first year, then if the opposition back then was like you are today, they would have been saying you're doing it because you want to stay long. We are doing it now. You're saying we're doing it because we want to retain office. Without fear, we will retain office. We will. Because if you have to compare 21 to 4, even in playway language.
We're just about to have relevance, member.
Relevance?
Yes.
Come in. You know, sometimes the road ain't always straight, you have corners.
Yes. Come in, man.
Can you please get here?
I'm trying. We just opened a new road in Coast, so I'm coming around the corner.
Please continue with your
Presiding
presentation.
Officer. So I think it's one of the times I would like to see us work together.
Yes.
But nevertheless, because of the overwhelming numbers, with or without the support of the other side, we will pass.
Yes.
This motion will go forward. We're just asking them to try to tag along that the history can say at least for once in your life you try to stand up to do something that was right for Tobago.
Yes.
The minority leader talked about he took the motion to Tobagonians. He didn't come down by me, he ain't carried by nobody I know.
Yes.
But the same how we took it to Tobagonians and they had a problem with it, I also took it to Tobagonians.
Yes.
And they supported it.
Right.
And right now, as it stands in the House, is we have the overwhelming numbers, so I guess that more people is bent on supporting it than opposing it.
Right.
I support this motion fully, Madam Presiding Officer, because I think it's timely, it's needed, and it's never too late to do the right thing.
Yes.
Doing the right thing is when you recognize something is wrong. And when you recognize something is wrong, then you are just a man or a woman enough to turn it around and do what you know is the right thing to do. The people that went before us, they work hard and they deserve what should be theirs. And we shouldn't have to wait on no time or no special person to come and say that this is the right time or that is the right time. Election or no election, I say, even though the people are struggling, it is theirs, give them what is theirs, because nobody can give us the right to determine that somebody should get what is theirs only when they're struggling. People work, and they should be treated fairly. So, Madam Presiding Officer, as I close, I support this bill 100%. I support that the Tobagonians who made the foundation on which we stand today should be given, should be recognized and given what is rightfully theirs. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I rest.
Well put it, man. Well put it.
I think this is the battle of the two petals. Okay. Councillor Petalan Roberts, you may now join this debate.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer, and I just want to ask that I refer to my notes as I contribute to this debate.
If granted.
Madam Presiding Officer, I want to start my contribution with a quote. Because while the mover of the motion, the leader of Assembly Business and the member for Bethesda, Lescato, Courland, was giving a contribution, there was a lot of snickers and laughter and seemed to be jeering and sneering at her response to this motion. And this is what I would like to start by saying. He who laughs at another man's misfortune has already opened doors for their very own. I rise and give my full support to this motion, and I want to thank the Honorable Chief Secretary as well for allowing us to bring this motion at a time such as this. And I was glad when the minority also opposed, because there are Tobagonians who are listening. And I don't understand the point where he made that this is self-serving, because I don't know that any members here are not contributing already to a fund, and this motion is actually seeking to rectify and to assist those who have not had the benefit of any retirement or pension fund during their tenure. And we stand actually on the shoulders of these very people. I do, because this assembly was not started in 2021 or even the year 2000. But there are those who actually build this horseshoe, this institution, for which we can now stand, and as the member for Roxboro was saying, some of us are looking so rich and so fluffy and so lovely. But we are really standing on the works and the sacrifices of those who have worked in the past. Madam Presiding Officer, this motion seeks to include former members as part of a contributory pension scheme being implemented under Section 16(5) of the Tobago House of Assembly Act No. 40. The present arrangement benefits only the current and recent members who had the opportunity to contribute, wholly negating the service of those members who built the very foundation of our democracy. These servants were excluded, though no fault of theirs, and I think it's only an adjustment that is only fair, very reasonable, and long overdue. At present, the system is fundamentally flawed, and I'll tell you something. I don't know if members of this House know this. We all pay a contribution to a fund. It goes into, as the Chief Secretary and member for Palliative Lands from the Speyside said, we pay into a fund, a bank account, and we have a cash book. We should be able to identify the contributions of every single member here. But when we get to the point of retirement and a payment of that pension, no money is drawn from that fund. It actually comes out of the parliamentary appropriation. And it is for this very reason I think we should make some amendment and revisions to the way in which we pay retirement benefits and pensions to assemblymen, former assemblymen, because you do not have to contribute to a fund to actually be paid, because it's actually coming out of an allocation, the appropriation of the Tobago House of Assembly. This system that we currently have, it rewards only those fortunate enough to serve after the contributory scheme was introduced, while former members who shouldered the same responsibilities, the same sacrifices that we make, and perform the same legislative duties are left with nothing. And member for Bethesda, Lescato, Courland, you know, I felt it because I've spoken to the same gentleman, and I remember as a child seeing them in this honorable house giving their contributions, and I could not believe that they are actually left with nothing at the end of the day. And to see people snickering and jeering and laughing, it is indeed shameful to see The same members, because they are doing the same thing that these members did, the former members who did the past, they sit in this very same chamber, give their contributions, take all the backlash, take all the licks, and at the end of the day get nothing. But as I said, I started saying, he who laughs at another man's misfortune has already opened doors to theirs. Now, a pension is not really a favor or gift. It is recognition of service. Every assemblyman who sat in this chamber has made immeasurable sacrifices. They gave up time with their families, set aside private ambitions, and opened up themselves to scrutiny and criticism that the public life brings. To think that nothing was in place for former members is deeply unjust. One should not devote a lifetime to serving your country and your community only to be neglected by the same country that they served. Madam Presiding Officer, while one cannot place a dollar value on that sacrifice, because you can't really pay for this kind of work, we can assure that when these men and women retire, they do so with dignity and some semblance of security. Retirement without financial stability can be debilitating for those who once held the people's trust. A scheme such as a pension scheme reduces dependency on their family members and even us as the current government now for welfare support, ensuring that those who serve Tobago remains independent in their latter years. Now, if young people are looking on and listening to us today, they will see this political path as one without long-term gain. And they in turn may turn away from public service and serving us as people in the future. However, if they see Tobago honors those who serve as we are trying to do now, that dedication is acknowledged and sacrifice is recognized and rewarded fairly, and then politics becomes an honorable and a sustainable career path. Such assurance strengthens our democracy by encouraging capable and attracting competent leaders to step forward.
Don't believe we could continue. We do not have a quorum. Can the members be summoned back to the chamber, please? Councillor Roberts, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, as the member for Roxboro, Argyle, clearly articulated the instance in Trinidad, we need not look far for a precedent. In our national parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, all parliamentarians, regardless of when they serve, are entitled to state-supported pensions, and especially for a shorter period of time. Why then should Tobago's members who face equal or greater challenges building this island from the ground up be treated as second-class leaders? Madam Presiding Officer, we cannot allow history to record that those who laid the foundation to Tobago's governance are weighed in the balance and left wanting. Madam Presiding Officer, we have to look at a well-structured, contributory pension scheme that spreads responsibly, fairly, and it is sustainable. Both the members of the Assembly and the institution must contribute, creating a joint benefit, and that is shared responsibility. We must design a framework where contributions are balanced, sustainable, and fair. And that way it is not a strain on only the public purse, but a partnership between those who serve and the assembly that they serve under. I will not dismiss the concerns on the other side, of the point where we are prioritizing this issue now, and that it may appear self-serving, especially as some public officers face the same reality in relation to gratuity payments. Others will warn of the fiscal strain such a program may create. Now, these concerns are valid, and I have conversations with my colleague. I speak to the member for Bethesda, Lescato, Courland all the time about the liability of the gratuity, and that we have to treat it as a matter of priority in the Assembly. And it is in the same vein we are treating this issue of former members not having the benefits that they should enjoy. We are treating them equally as important. Madam Presiding Officer, you know there's a saying, a king is without honor in his own home. Are our assemblymen left to suffer while those who come after should enjoy the benefits that they have never had? Should those whose shoulder we stood on be treated with scant courtesy? Today we have a chance to change that narrative by providing a fair retirement benefit or some kind of support to those whose shoulder we now stand. A motion like this is long overdue, but now is the best time to bring this to the fore. Let me take this opportunity to thank again the mover of this motion, the member for Bethesda, Lescato, Courland, and also the member for Palatine and Sweeney Space and our Chief Secretary, especially for their first term in office. This is a testimony of the vision, the foresight, and most importantly, the compassion that we have for all the people of Tobago. The questions must be asked to the minority on the other side. Why was this not addressed during the 21 years in office? Many former assemblymen and women and members died and were unable to benefit from this, or have died. Madam Presiding Officer, the Assembly has a duty just not to govern for today, but to honor those who came before. And by introducing this scheme, thereby, past leaders are considered under Section 16.5 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act. We want to bring equity, restore public trust, enhance the fairness, and build a legacy of justice and responsibility. I therefore wish to say that I give full support to this motion, and I hope that the members of this House gives us its full support so that we can move forward and give the members, the former members, their just due. I thank you very much.
Minority Councillor, Mrs. Danielle Benoit.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, for the opportunity to contribute to this motion. Madam Presiding Officer, I heard those members on the other side, particularly the Leader of Assembly Business when she moved the motion in her contribution, but there were a number of areas that I had hoped the member as well as other members on that side in their contribution should have given some more information as to how this policy will be implemented. Madam Presiding Officer, the Leader of Government Business and other members spoke to the whole issue of equity and the issue of the number of years or the qualifying requirements for persons who would have served in this House. But Madam Presiding Officer, if we take a trip down memory lane, and if we would have done the research, the whole issue of pensions nationally came into being with Act number 24 of 1969. And under that first act, it spoke to members of Parliament obtaining pension via a contributory pension scheme. And the qualifying requirements for those persons who are referred to as legislators was a period of 8 years. Subsequently, in Act number 17 of 2007, there was an amendment to reduce that number from 8 to 5. We also heard on the other side persons speaking to the fact that the PNM was in office for 21 years and did nothing about pension to assemblymen. But, Madam Presiding Officer, the 1980 Act made no provisions for pensions for assemblymen. The revised Act 40 of 1996, under Section 16, as is quoted, made the provisions for a contributory pension scheme for members. So Section 16.5 speaks to the Assembly shall, in accordance with the financial rules under Section 52, establish a contributory pension scheme for members. And from 1996, Madam Presiding Officer, in 1996, the NAR was the government in office at the THA level. From 1980 to 2001, the NAR was also in government. It was not until 2007 that we would have seen the implementation of this members' superannuation benefits regulations. And if you look, I think every member would have had one. If you look to the back of it, it says this was passed in the Tobago House of Assembly on the 22nd day of November 2007. At that time, there was a PNM-THA, and it took a PNM-THA to fully implement this contributory pension scheme. In 2009, it became fully implemented. And, Madam Presiding Officer, it is not correct to say that the PNM did nothing for 21 years, because it is the PNM, through its policy and through its work, would have implemented what we are now benefiting from in terms of a contributory pension scheme. The other point, Madam Presiding Officer, is the scheme is contributory. And because it is contributory, it means that members should contribute something. And again, if we go back to the members' superannuation benefits regulation, if we look at Section 2, which speaks to contributions, it says between the effective date and the pension revision date, members are required to contribute 5% of the salary to the UTC Universal Retirement Fund, and the Tobago House of Assembly is required to contribute 15% of the salary to this Universal Retirement Fund. It also speaks to the members' contribution under this section are to be deducted from their salaries and paid by the Tobago House of Assembly on behalf of the member. And with effect from the pension revision date, members are required to contribute 5% of their salary to this fund. So, Madam Presiding Officer, if we are speaking to a contributory fund for persons who have not contributed, the member in her wrapping up, I would hope that she could deal with how we will provide for those members as it relates to the contribution. I also want to go back to the initial Act of 1969, because when this Act came into force, it actually spoke about persons who would have served prior to the implementation of this act. And one of the things that it pointed out in its provisions is that because it is a contributory pension scheme, for persons who would not have contributed or for persons who would have served prior to the implementation of the act, it provided for them to contribute. And I think it is section 8. It says, where a person who ceases to be a legislator but is not eligible for a retiring allowance under this act because of the provisions therein, it says he shall be paid a gratuity of 1/10. No, this is not the section. So when I find the section, I will, but basically the section provides for, so it is, section 11, subsection 4. It says a former legislator shall not be eligible for a retiring officer unless he has paid a special contribution referred to in subsection 2 in a lump sum to the controller of accounts. I don't know if this is something that can be considered for former members who were not part of the contributory scheme, but I will like on this side, we would like on this side to hear how that contributory element will materialize as this is implemented. Madam Presiding Officer, the other thing that I would have hoped would have come forward in the debate is how many members are affected and to quantify the cost of those so affected members. Initially, I had asked the question about how far back this motion will go, since we started in 1980, and the member would have spoken to us going as far back as 1980. So it will be instructive to identify who are the members that were affected and what is the associated cost with such an implementation of the scheme, and whether it will also be contributory and what percentage will the past members be required to contribute. The member also, in piloting the motion, spoke to the fact that we may not have the legal authority to do what we are asking to do via the motion. And as a result, this may require, of course, intervention of Parliament. It may also require a revision of the Pensions Act. It may require conversations with the SRC, maybe the Ministry of Finance, and other national authorities. In listening to some of the members opposite, members were stating that we on this side of the minority does not support the motion. And Madam Presiding Officer, in principle, we support the motion. However, there are some questions that remain unanswered, some concerns that the minority has that has not been addressed in members as they contributed to the motion. So, Madam Presiding Officer, we heard a member speaking to the fact that the minority would have opposed, and the minority is speaking about the timing of the motion. Yes, the minority has concerns about the timing of the motion, and the minority leader would have indicated that we would have spoken to persons, because generally when we have motions, we reach out to individuals, we share the motion to get general feedback, about people's view on what is being proposed. And of course, the member did not explicitly say it in piloting the motion, but persons are wondering if we are now seeking to do this, as the minority leader would have indicated, because it is expressed in the public domain that there may be some persons who may not be returning, and whether or not the motion is self-seeking in that nature. The member for Bethesda Leketo, she spoke about inequity, but she did not specifically speak about whether or not there will be revisions to the requirements to ensure whether or not persons contribute, whether or not persons are eligible to participate in the pension. So now the requirements are 6 years. The national requirements have been revised to 5 years. Is it that the recommendation of the persons or the executive to reduce the amount to 4 years? Those are some things that were not explicitly stated while the member piloted the motion. And those are some information and those are some specifics that we hope that could have been cleared up while the motion was piloted. Madam Presiding Officer, we are also wondering if an actuarial review and a financial review of what is being proposed will be commissioned to quantify the number of qualifying former members, estimate the benefit based on service, and to recommend a structured but manageable support plan. We also have some implementation concerns. How will this be executed? Will we create a new non-contributory category? Will there be a monthly stipend or a lump sum symbolic grant? Who decides the eligibility, and what is the eligible criteria? What is that based on? And Madam Presiding Officer, I'm wondering as well, while we understand that fairness to past members, and we heard all the emotions in the contributions, we on this side are wondering if a dangerous precedent is being set, because a precedent could be set in relation to contract workers, because currently contract workers does not have a contributory pension scheme, and those persons could also claim unfairness and disparity when compared to public servants. What about the persons who would have been contributing to the National Insurance NIB pension scheme? Right now, based on the law, persons must contribute 750 contributions. Outside of those, if you don't have 750 contributions, you are not entitled to a pension. However, you will receive a lump sum payment under 750 contributions. So, Madam Presiding Officer, I want to caution us as we move forward to consider whether or not we are setting a precedent that will cause other sectors of workers to have an expectation that something similar or have a similar entitlement. And Madam Presiding Officer, if we are also speaking about fairness, we are asking the question and we are hoping that it can be clear in the wind-up if there is an attempt to change the qualifying criteria, and if there's an attempt to change the qualifying criteria, what is the new qualifying criteria for members to participate in such a pension scheme? So Winding up, Madam Presiding Officer, I would really hope that we will go back to the drawing board and do the necessary work to address the issue that is currently before us. We have come here with a lot of emotions, and I am hoping that we are not cloaking this issue of fairness to shield our personal advantage. It's not about passing feel-good resolutions that are legally untenable, fiscally irresponsible, or
Member.
inconsistent with standards.
Please,
we are-
one moment,
Sorry.
please. Can you kindly step outside and take that call? Thank you. Continue.
So as I was wrapping up, Madam Presiding Officer, let us not pass feel-good motions and resolutions that may be legally untenable, fiscally irresponsible, or inconsistent with standards we apply to the rest of society. I think if we are serious about what we intend to do, an actuarial review is required and should be commissioned. A formal proposal for the implementation of this plan should be presented to this House for discussion and debate. And this motion in its current form may be politically popular, but I caution this House that popularity is no substitute for prudence. So I challenge us all. Yes, we want to honor those members who would have served in the past, and they do deserve to be recognized and honored, but let us do that within the ambits of the law and within the means of the people that we are elected to serve. And I am hoping that some solid proposal will come so that we can debate and discuss. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, for the opportunity to contribute.
Assemblyman Member for Bethesda Lescotto, Assemblyman Hackett, you may now wrap up this debate.
Madam Presiding Officer, it would be remiss of me as area representative of Bethesda Lescotto, which includes Courland Lane and Woodlands, to not also congratulate the family of the late, great Hochoy Charles. As you would know, you were there last night. The pride I felt, understanding that he is a son of the soil that I now represent, and the fact that as a Tobago House of Assembly, we were very instrumental in that nomination. We know Mr. Charles, while he was alive, didn't want to accept any type of celebration or honor, but we know that he deserved every recognition now being given to him. And so we want to congratulate the family, son Mboya, who accepted that ORTT on his family's behalf, and wish them good luck and Godspeed as they carry the Charles name far and wide. Madam Presiding Officer, in bringing this motion to a close, I must clear up a point that has been lingering throughout the debate. And sometimes, what people say, if it ain't bother you, leave it. It is bothering me, so I'm not leaving it. The fact that we continue to have some misleading comments by the minority leader in this House. Madam Presiding Officer, when this motion was crafted, one of the first things our so compassionate, generous, and mindful Chief Secretary spoke to us about is the timing. The timing, if we encapsulated every issue, even the issues we now faced. And so if you would appreciate, the original motion spoke only to members before us. As a matter of fact, we at that point in time, only looked at the members that served before 1996, not even understanding the challenges of those in that 96 to 2001 period, the Fifth Assembly. And it was deliberate, because we felt as if with everything that has happened with us, SRC's ruling, arrears, and so on, we were in a place where, in the moment, we found it to be not self-serving to speak to members who did not benefit as we did. And so again, original motion only spoke to the members who were not as fortunate as us. And if that is the motion that the minority leader is saying, he took to Tobagonians, and they were asking why now, why were we so self-serving in bringing that, etc. But we only made the amendments today in this house. Then which motion was self-serving? And so I dare the minority to at least come into this space and be honest. You're trying to make a political point. You cannot make that point. It's not based on fact. The motion that went into the public space spoke to the members that served before 1996. There was nothing self-serving there because it did not speak to all members. And the Chief Secretary reiterated the fact that between that time of the motion being published to today, even this morning after 2, before I came here, other members, former members, wives and children of former members was speaking to the fact that we should have been inclusive in our approach to even take care of ourselves. And it's only on this floor this morning, today, the amendments were made. So I don't know which motion was in the space with Tobagonians clamoring and crying out and asking about self-service. And I wish to caution the minority leader and the minority councillor to be honest when they come to this house. Madam Presiding Officer, let me return to my wrap-up. I want to spend some time, because I didn't spend enough time speaking to that Fifth Assembly cohort. The cohort with members such as, and I want to call the members out. I actually want to call them out. Utrus Thornhill, Max James, Deborah Moore-McGinnis, and in that particular assembly she was independent. Beverly Ramsey Moore, William Mackenzie, Dolores Edwards, Hochoy Charles, Ashworth Jack, Richard Alfred, Cecil Caruth, Judy Mitchell Bob, and Carlisle Dick. I don't have the councillors in front of me right now, but I want to speak to that specific cohort because something strange, rather peculiar, occurred with that particular cohort. And from what I've been advised, even after that Act 40 of 1996 and the pension scheme being brought into effect, it didn't immediately occur. But while 5% of their salaries and the expected 10% that the Assembly contributed on their behalf went into that UTC scheme, we had an issue with a new government coming into office, the People's National Movement government, where even a former councillor, and so yes, I'm remembering the councillors now, Stanley Baird was a councillor, Orville London was a councillor, and I am thinking more. I'll remember soon. But Mr. Orville London was a councillor in that period. And so upon becoming Chief Secretary, 2001, you know what happened? You didn't care that you were in a cohort with persons who were affected. You're Chief Secretary now, and you're in government now. And so in spite of what happened, or would have happened, with that cohort, you and your Secretary of Finance, I think it was Councillor Anselm London at that time, decided to go in a different direction, regardless of what would have occurred, how it would have impacted former members. It was not your problem. You were also affected, but because you're sitting in the seat of power now, you completely forgot about them and had them having to pick up the pieces wherever they were. And so, Madam Presiding Officer, it speaks to even political malfeasance and that nefarious act of now we in charge. It doesn't matter who's affected, we will take care of our members. But this motion wasn't meant to speak to PNM, as I said before, TPP, PDP, DAC, NAR. It is not a motion to be divisive and to speak to partisan politics. It affects all of us. My former assemblyman, the assemblyman that served in the area that I now represent, and of course the boundaries changed part of it. And I'm speaking about her, Marisha Osman, only one term in this office and had to return to teaching. We're not thinking about even members who served, if you really are trying to make this chaotic in your own political organization and injustice was done to them. Former Chief Secretary Kelvin Charles was a presiding officer, went into the politics, and we know what happened with him. So even in this, even if you didn't want to support the usual bias that the PNM has, should have shown here, because this is a motion that affects us all. I shouldn't have to wonder if I should serve another term or not to get a pension. I could serve a term and pass the baton on comfortably if that is the choice I want to make. But you feel hamstrung that you have to hold on to this thing, and that is self-serving. That is the definition of self-serving, if I have to hold on just to get a pension, versus passing on representation to someone else if I believe that that person has the opportunity and the ability to represent better than I can. Madam Presiding Officer, I want to speak to the fact that we have to be fair to the members who, as we said before, and we keep reiterating, have built this house, and we now stand on their backs. Our original motion was very clear, only treating with them. And again, because we saw the nuances of coming to the house over and over again with similar issues, when you can have a blanket over everything that challenges the service of members of this house, we obliged to include those areas. And I'm very happy we did, because again, we don't know what's going to happen with the minority leader when the house dissolves and it's six to me or any of us in this space. And life is so fragile. Forget about us. What will happen to our husbands, wives, children if we're not in a position to serve in this August House? And so this is a very important motion and has nothing to do with self-serving, because this particular motion speaks to assemblymen who would be in here in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and so it's not only for us. Equally, Madam Presiding Officer, those who served, and it's where our original motion was crafted, that 1980 to 1996 period, they entered this house when no scheme existed at all. Is that their fault? No, it's not. But just in the same way we transitioned from Act 37 of 1980 to Act 40 of 1996, transition happens. And sometimes the legislation doesn't pick up everything when that transition happens. Madam Presiding Officer, they gave their service when the assembly was new, untested, and even ridiculed, and yet they retired with nothing. It bears repeating, they retired, Madam Presiding Officer, with nothing. And this is where, as an executive council, and I'm happy that we kept that particular clause in the resolution, as an executive council, we must be prepared to intervene with interim support. Interim. It is not a complete solution, but it is a necessary acknowledgement until Parliament acts. And Parliament must act. I mean, other assemblies have gone before, they've advocated, they've implored, they've begged, basically. And we've had the same outcome. And I'm hoping that this particular government listens to the pleas of our Tobagonians who have served. I already laid out the path earlier, but it bears underscoring. Parliament must legislate retrospective coverage for those who were excluded from that 1996 change in the legislation. They can also legislate to restore the contributions of the 1996 to 2001 cohort, because their 5% contribution and the Assembly's 10% contribution were real, and there was a legitimate expectation of all members who contributed. And Parliament can and must legislate to ensure parity in qualifying conditions so that one full term here is treated just as one full term there. That last point is critical, Madam Presiding Officer. And as stated before by members who contributed earlier, Parliament members qualify for pension after 60 months. In this assembly, it's 72 months. Madam Presiding Officer, this is an insult to this very institution. It implies that a Tobagonian service is worth less. We know it's not, and therefore we must stand up for that. That is why we insist on the parity we speak of. If parliamentarians are pensionable after 60 months, at least assemblymen must be pensionable in the same 60 months. We know that the terms don't align. It's 4 years here and 5 there. But if we're speaking parity, at least start there. But we are going to 72 months, and so that is also another area of concern. Madam Presiding Officer, when the minority councillor asks how we can justify giving pensions to assemblymen councillors who never paid into the contributory pension scheme, I have some suggestions, and I got some legal advice on how we can go. 1, ex gratia payments, special pensions, or retirement grants. Parliament can authorize the ex gratia payments, and even us as an executive council, they are sometimes called special pensions, and they are for individuals who gave service before a contributory scheme was established. These are not tied to contributions, but to recognition of service, of equity, and of fairness. And Trinidad and Tobago has done this before. There's precedent. For example, former daily rated workers, ex-police officers, or groups overlooked in older pension schemes. This can apply to assemblymen who served before this 1996 period when no contributory scheme existed. 2, there can be validation of past service. Parliament can pass a law to deem past years of service as pensionable, even if no contributions were made. Because essentially the law will say, we will treat their service as if they had been a part of a scheme. What happens here is that government assumes the cost of those past years instead of the members. And this is exactly how the public service pensions have been handled in cases where officers who became permanent after serving as temporary or contract workers. 3, there can be a hybrid solution with interim support while we work on the legislative fix. The Executive Council could provide the interim financial support I spoke to earlier, or stipends for those excluded, recognizing immediate hardship. But we know that the funding is always a challenge in the Tobago space. And because, as Secretary for Finance spoke to earlier, even the fund that we're contributing to, that's not how we access the payments. It actually comes from allocation from Parliament. And in that regard, it's straight to Parliament we must go to ask for us to have that specific allocation to treat with this hybrid methodology. And 4, equity and precedent. Internationally, legislators often act on the principle of equity in public service. You cannot punish someone just because they served too early. The law can make their pensions non-contributory, paid in full by the state, as said before, since they were never given the opportunity to contribute in the first place themselves. So, Madam Presiding Officer, as I wind up, let me be clear. I have reiterated the injustice of the clawback which affected members of the 5th Assembly who served between 1996 and 2001. I have underscored the plight of those excluded before 1996, and we spoke to some specific issues. I used Mr. Regis Karut and Mr. Stanley Baird as examples there. I have also clarified what Parliament's legislative responsibilities must be. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, I have re-emphasized the principle of parity. We are not asking for charity. We are asking for parity. We are asking for fairness, Madam Presiding Officer. We're asking for justice. We're asking for equity. And we are asking that the sacrifices of all who served in this assembly be treated with dignity. And with those clarifications placed firmly on the record, Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move the motion as amended.
Honorable members, as we know, amendments were proposed. As such, I would put the amendments to vote in the order they were proposed. Honorable members, the first amendment proposed was to insert the words, but other members have experienced gaps and limitation in access to such benefits at the ending of the second recital. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against say no. Amendment carried. Honorable members, the second amendment proposed was to insert the words, and further inequities have arisen for other members throughout the history of the Assembly at the ending of the third recital. All in favor say aye. Any against say no. The amendment is carried. Honourable members, the third amendment proposed was to leave out the words that now benefit their successors at the end of the fifth recital and insert the words or by other circumstances that have limited their access to retirement benefits. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Any against, say no. The amendment is carried. Honourable members, the fourth amendment proposed was to insert the words from its inception to the present at the first resolution after the word assembly, and that the word support be left out of the first resolution and add the word benefits at the end of the resolution. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against say no. The amendment is carried. Honourable members, the fifth amendment proposed was to leave out the words appropriate retirement provisions at the end of the second resolution after the word provide and insert the words interim support. To leave out the words ensuring that their service is duly recognized and insert the words and calls on the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago to enact necessary legislative amendments that guarantee parity in retirement benefits between members of the Assembly and members of Parliament at the end of the motion. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Any against, say no. The amendment is carried. Honourable members, all amendments have been voted upon. I will now put the amended motion to the House. Whereas Section 16(5) of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996 provides that the Assembly shall, in accordance with the financial rules made under Section 52, establish a contributory pension scheme for members. And whereas such a contributory pension scheme has since been implemented for current and recent members of the Assembly, thereby affording them structured retirement benefits, but other members have experienced gaps and limitations in access to such benefits. And whereas former members of the Assembly, before the establishment of the Contributory Pension Fund scheme, were not eligible to participate and as a result do not enjoy retirement benefits equivalent to those now available, and further inequities have risen for other members throughout the history of the Assembly. And whereas this inequity leaves former members of the Assembly without adequate pension arrangement despite their years of service to the people of Tobago, and whereas it is a fundamental principle of fairness and good governance that those who have held elected office should not be disadvantaged by the timing of reforms or by other circumstances that have limited their access to retirement benefits, be it resolved that this Honourable House affirms that all who have served as members of the Assembly from its inception to present should have access to fair and reasonable retirement benefits. Be it further resolved that this House supports the Executive Council in its efforts to provide interim support for former members of the Assembly who were not part of the contributory pension scheme, and calls on the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago to enact necessary legislative amendments that guarantees parity in retirement benefits between the members of the Assembly and members of Parliament. That was a mouthful. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Any against, say no. Clerk?
Member for Lekoto, Assemblyman Zoshakit, how do you vote? Aye. Councillor Petalan Roberts, how do you vote? Aye. Member for Plymouth Blackrock, Assemblyman Niall George, how do you vote? Aye. Assemblyman Wayne Clark, member for Lambo Lowlands, how do you vote? Aye. Assemblyman Terence Baines, member for Bethel New Grange, how do you vote? Aye. Assemblyman Sonny Craig, member for Boku Mount Pleasant, how do you vote? Aye. Assemblyman Nigel Tate, member for Singer Hill, Pigeons Hill, how do you vote? Aye. Councillor Tasha Boyce, how do you vote? Aye. Councillor Orlando Kerr, how do you vote? Aye. Minority Councillor Peter Daniel Benoit, how do you vote? Abstain. All right. Based on the division, the votes were counted. 9 members voted yes, 1 abstention.
The ayes have it. The motion has been carried.
Motion for adjournment.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I beg to move that this House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Honourable members, the question put is that this House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against say no. The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. Honourable members.